OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
Bang on 7:30 on this Friday morning. Delighted to have you along with us to OTB AM, and we've a packed show coming up for you over the next little while. We are obviously going to kick off by reflecting on last night's heroics at the Aviva Stadium, where Dundalk went through to the Europa League group stages after a 3-1 win over KI, and we're going to be joined, as we were this time last week, by the Dundalk coach Shane Keegan to get thoughts about exactly what that was all like from within the camp last night, and also looking ahead to today's draw, see how that's going to stack up. Also sticking with football, Liverpool out of the League Cup, of course, but a decent start to the season, and we also want to get the thoughts of Phil Thompson on the draw for the Champions League for Liverpool for the season ahead, and there'll be a few more bits and bobs in there as well for Tomo. That'll be coming away a little bit later on. Rugby with Jenny Murphy, a new initiative to attract under-20s into the women's game there, and plenty more as well. Phil Egan will give you your TV digest for the weekend. Lads are going to make the case for the games that you need to watch and the games that you needn't bother with, which essentially amounts to a list of the games that you need to watch and to listen to, of course. Plenty more as well, including a great yarn from Pilar Caffrey when we get to the newspapers from this morning. So all that is to come over the course of this morning with myself and Owen between now and 10 a.m. this morning. I'm going to kick you off, though, with a little snippet from last night's football show. It's Brian Kerr in conversation with Nathan.
Brian Kerr is standing by. Evening, Brian.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm very well. That's a heck of an achievement for Dundalk.
Yes, yeah. You know, look, it has to be said, Nathan, they got the handy side of the draw all round. If you were to believe in advance that you could get through by beating the team from Andorra, Moldova and the Faroes to get through to the group stages, you'd say that is very unlikely to happen, to work out that way. But, you know, it's still an excellent achievement for an Irish team to get through to group stages, and we should all celebrate that. I'd be blunt about it now, Nathan. I wouldn't fancy Dundalk's chances of getting many points in the group based on what I saw tonight.
Yeah, let's hold off on that one for a moment, because I think that is the next level. We'll start thinking about tomorrow's draw and actually where are Dundalk really compared to the last 2-3 years to go and acquit themselves to the best of their ability, as you say, in these huge games that are coming down the track. On tonight's game, KI Klasvik got themselves back into it in the second half. Were Dundalk a far superior side?
I didn't think they were far superior. I thought it took Dundalk 25 minutes to get going in the match. I thought they made it into a bit of a rough and tumble match, Nathan, in the early first quarter of the game. They failed to get the ball down and play with any real constructive pattern of play. I didn't think Greg Sloggett got on the ball. I thought they got Chris Shields was badly missed, and I didn't see Sean Murray in the match until he scored the goal, the headed goal. There wasn't enough of Patrick McElhenney on the ball. The full-backs didn't involve themselves in the play. Now, maybe they were having a look at Cowie, as we called them when I was in the Faroes, Cowie Clackfield. They were having a look at them, and they were sitting off and waiting. But I thought it took them a long time to start showing a real bit of control and a pattern of play, that they began to look like they were better than the Faroes team. And then they had a spell just leading up to the goal for a couple of minutes where they moved the ball around much better, and they passed it and they shifted it from side to side, and eventually Sean Howard's ball into the box. Patrick Hoban got an excellent header. He did well to hold Aldmar Farrow off, nod the ball down, and Murray got in ahead of the goalkeeper, Johansson. The goalkeeper's all been the problem in the Faroes. I had contact from someone from Dundalk asked me this week, what did I think of Klaksvik? And I said, well, the goalkeeper will be a problem if you put him under pressure. And I was proved right. Their goalkeeper was dreadful. But, you know, then Dundalk took a bit of control and they got a hold of it early in the second half to get another. Look, it was a fortunate enough goal. The goalkeeper comes out in a corner and misses his punch, doesn't get to it, and it breaks the clear. He sticks it in the net. Then they sat on the lid, which is fair enough in European football. They sat on it a little bit, but didn't sit on it with any great control. And they got away with a few things. Then they conceded the goal. There's helter-skelter for a few minutes, and Daniel Kelly gets on to McMillan's pass on the counter-attack and took his goal very, very well. But then there's still a lot of helter-skelter stuff near the end of the game. I just didn't think it was a very convincing performance. I thought it was way short of the control that Dundalk showed a few years back when the midfield was Stevie O'Donnell, Robbie Benson and Chris Shields, and Dane Massey and Gannon as the full back, Darryl Horgan out on the left, Mountney on the right, and Macmillan through the middle. I thought it was much more controlled performances. Maybe we'll see that in the group stages, but I thought it was a patchy performance. They did enough to win the game, but the opposition weren't any great shapes. They were very direct, played off the big man up front, the big Norwegian lad Mitskogen, who played well in the game and gave them a lot of trouble.
As you say, Andorra, Moldova, and then the Faroe Islands, and they sort of scraped through all three of them in the end without being hugely impressive. And Filippo Giovagnoli's come into a difficult situation. There's obviously a lot going on off the pitch in Dundalk, and there was a lot going on it this season as well. They were nowhere near where they've been over the last couple of years. They decide to change manager. He has the connections. He's done nothing wrong, but he finds himself managing a senior team for the first time. Was there anything you saw tonight or over the last couple of European matches that he's doing differently, that a style of play that he's bringing in that is different to what Vinnie Perth was doing for the last 18 months?
Well, I didn't see anything dramatic. I mean, be it that I saw the game in Andorra. I only saw bits and scraps of that, and it looked like that Dundalk had good control in that match. I think Celje, the Slovenian team, were a better quality altogether, and Dundalk, it was the errors at the back that cost them. Gary Rogers and Brian Gartland's mix-up early in the match, or in the first half, caused the first goal, and then late on there were more defensive mix-up, but they were of a slightly better quality, I would have said. I see it dramatically different. No, I can't say I did. But remember, this squad of players was put together, I would say, by League of Ireland standards quite expensively, with the idea that there was pressure on to get through qualifying rounds in the Champions League or group stages in the Europa League. That's why, as I understand it, that's why Pitch Six bought into Dundalk. They bought Dundalk in order to. They felt that it would be a lot of income from European football on a regular basis in the group stages. And now they're there, and now they will have that income. And when that income comes, I would be very interested to see, do they invest in the facilities of a stadium in Dundalk or improve that stadium to some degree. That stadium in Dundalk and Oriel Park is an embarrassment at the moment in terms of, even at League of Ireland level, it's dreadful really. And given that they've been so successful over so many years, the fact that it hasn't improved at all is fairly, I wouldn't say it's scandalous, but it's very poor, Nathan. And really these people who are in charge of Dundalk now need to take a grip, tell the supporters where they're going, what the future is for the stadium or development of the stadium or something, because those facilities are an embarrassment compared to the stadiums we see around Europe, even in the smaller countries around Europe. Even you see the stadium that the team played in Andorra is actually a better stadium. But so, these are things for Dundalk for the future. Now there'll be money in the bank, or there will be money coming into the bank, and there'll be an opportunity there for them to do it. But the squad that they had, they built a squad that was with the intention of not just, winning the League of Ireland again, which they're obviously not going to now this year, but competing well in Europe. And they've got there by fortunate means, I'd say, to end up getting the Faroes team in the playoff stage. When you look across the fixtures in Europe tonight, I would say they were the two lowest teams in the coefficient. Yeah. And also, and I would also say, Nathan, the quality of the football in the first half of the match matched that. And if that's harsh, I'm prepared to stick with that opinion. I thought it was fairly rough and tumble, I'd say, stuff a lot of the first half until just before the spell when Dundalk scored a goal.
Here, and listen, you're more than entitled to that opinion. It's interesting your comments about the stadium, because a victory like this, you can never just savour it for what it is for Dundalk. It's what does it mean for Irish football? What does it mean for the League of Ireland? And I know in the middle of COVID, when we're talking about money coming into Irish football and questions are asked about where Dundalk spent their money, they would say, well, they've done a lot behind the scenes in terms of gym equipment and treating their players better, and that they haven't been handed a stadium by the council like certain other clubs maybe, is the way Dundalk would look at it. But would you have a concern now that actually they go and spend this, and is that a concern, or actually would that be beneficial for the league as well if they spend a good chunk of this money on players from inside and outside the league and bring the standard up, or actually is the best thing for the League of Ireland that Dundalk invest this in facilities?
I think they need to get a balance on that. They need to have a plan. They need to decide on an action plan in combination with the council and with Dundalk. I don't see. I see every reason why Dundalk should get a good chunk of money from state resources, from government funds or local authority funds. They brought a lot of joy and a lot of credibility to the town over the last number of years. They played some great football and brought some great nights to anyone in the vicinity, in the general area of Dundalk, who would have loved the football they played and the style they played with. So, I think they're entitled to expect help from the authorities, and not just their own resources, but they've also got to put their own money where their mouth is as well, and not just invest the money in the team and around the team, and doing the gym is okay. The gym is useful for the players, but if you're hoping to have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5,000 people at your matches on a regular basis, you need to provide modern facilities and suitable facilities. I mean, the facilities for the away supporters in Dundalk is scandalous. They're standing out in the rain. They're sitting out in the rain up in one corner of the ground with a dearth of facilities. It's not even last century, 2 centuries ago stuff, I'd say. And their own supporters aren't particularly well catered for either. But look, tonight is maybe more, it's about they've achieved something that everyone in Irish football will be happy about, that we'll have an interest in the Europa League group stages for only the 3rd time, that we'll be watching those matches. It's a pity that we won't have supporters into them. It was a big decision for Dundalk to go and play in the Aviva Stadium tonight, and it's a pity that there was no one there to cheer them on and to enjoy that occasion. But that's how it is, and it's probably how it's going to be in the group stages too. Yeah,
you'd have to assume that all their home matches will probably be at the Aviva once again. And we went through some of the teams they could play from. Even Feyenoord potentially been a pot 3 team, up to the likes of an Arsenal, Tottenham, Leicester City, Celtic, Rangers, all in that draw tomorrow as well. How they fare then? It's going to be a cramped end to the League of Ireland season, but like we think of the last time Dundalk qualified for the Europa League and acquitted themselves so well, and it's one of the main reasons that Stephen Kenny is now the Ireland manager. They beat Maccabi Tel Aviv, they draw with AZ Alkmaar, and they run Zenit very close twice, and in the other 2 games that they lost, they were right there in all of those matches. From what you've seen tonight, and we don't know the draw, you don't sound overly confident that we can get anywhere near to that level again from this current Dundalk?
Well, not the team that put out in the field tonight. I feel the team that played in the field tonight is a long way short of that team I mentioned earlier on when they were at their best, which they showed in those group stages. I mean, I was at all those games, bar the one in Israel, but they had. I think individually and collectively we're a better side then. I mean, you look at the position in the league table at the moment, and you mentioned that it'll be a very cramped programme towards the end of the season and the group stages start. I think they showed last weekend against Shamrock Rovers what their interest was in the league. Their interest in the league was that they didn't pick their team to play against Shamrock Rovers in what was a very important game for Shamrock Rovers and some of the other teams in the league in relation to their finishing positions and making the top 4 and so on. I think their ambition now is just to make the top 4 and to probably try to get some points in the group stages and make some money from the points garnered, which maybe that's the right approach. Yeah. But you would think you would like to think that they would be competitive in every game they play in the league also. I mean, in my opinion, the league game in Shamrock Rovers should have been postponed the other night. It shouldn't have been played. The Dogs should have been given the opportunity to rest the players fully for tonight's game. Now, as it happened, they just decided to rest the players anyway by not playing them. But it meant they put out what was more or less the second team against Shamrock Rovers in the league. Now, was that fair to the other sides in the table who are in competition against each other for places near the top and places near the bottom? I didn't think so. But the answer was to call the game off.
Yeah, well, you're right. Like, that's not the Ducks' fault. They have to prioritise tonight's match.
Sure. For sure. No, it wasn't. And I think the game should have been off. But look, it'll be interesting to see how they combine the two, playing the group games and playing the group games in the Europa League and the remaining games in the League of Ireland.
Yeah, Filippo Giovagnoli, their manager, has just been in his press conference saying he wasn't happy with the performance tonight either, but obviously they got the job done. And do we have to take that into account with tonight's performance as well, that this is a huge game still for all of these players, and for once it's a rarity, a game of this importance for an Irish club. They are overwhelming favourites to go and win it, so there was a lot of pressure on the players tonight. Maybe that was a factor as well?
Yeah, I think in the first half there was signs of nervousness. It certainly wasn't a sign of experience and confidence in the first half. There was a lot of misplaced passes and a bit of ginging up the pitch at times. It wasn't a composure that I would have associated with the Dog. But I think Chris Shields has a big influence on that. I mean, it might sound slightly odd to say one player should make a big difference, but he has been such a key man for them over the years in terms of that holding position, controlling the tempo of the game, ensuring that there's players around him to pass the ball to and build up the play. And I think that they missed him badly. But, I look at I don't know how far away Sean Gannon. I mean, why he didn't play tonight? Dave Massey had an operation. Obviously, he's not available. I mean, they're such key players in the Dog style over the years. But look, at the manager and everyone else around it will just be delighted that they made it and they got through. I'm looking at it in the bigger picture and saying, are they likely to get points in the group stages? Against better teams that, like the Faroes League, there'll be only, I think, maybe two teams lower ranked than the Faroes League in the whole of Europe. KI Klaksvik, it's a remote place in the Faroe Islands. It's, by my reckoning, when I was driving there, it was about 5 islands away, and even to get players to go there from the Tórshavn, they would have had to think about it unless Cowie were paying a lot more than the clubs in Tórshavn, like Habe and B36. So, they beat Dynamo Tbilisi 6-1. We saw how they did it, beat them with a lot of set pieces, balls into the box. And you could see tonight how they could make goals and create goals, but quite limited defensively, and were found out. But look, I'm delighted for Dundalk. I feel sorry for Vinny Pear tonight that he wasn't involved in it.
Yeah.
I think he was very, very harshly treated. And, some of the suggestions that were being made to him, as I understand it, in advance of some of the games prior to them removing him, were outlandish and ridiculous. And were obviously the opinions of non-football people that hadn't a clue what they were talking about. So they dispensed with him on the basis of a European defeat. And the ball has bounced for them well since then. They've got handy opposition, and they've come through it, and they're in the group stages. And we look forward to seeing the draw tomorrow and Dundalk's big matches in the Europa League group stages.
Yeah, we'll keep a very close eye on that. I can't believe you didn't back up your line you were saying at the weekend that Klaksvik was essentially the Cork of the Faroe Islands, that they fancied themselves a little bit.
No, what I'd say to you was, Klaksvik is the fish capital of Europe now. The fish factories in Klaksvik are booming, and it's going really well up there at the moment. And obviously their team won the league last year. They're a few points off Habe, as they're called, HB, at the moment, and they may not win the league again this year. But they were down the second division a few years ago, so they've come back very well. And Mitchell Thomason is a very, very good coach, a good manager, and he got the best out of what he had tonight. They just hadn't got But it's a small place. It's a very small. They've a very small group to pick from. Interesting that there's a few foreign players in the squad tonight, but not many of them in the starting team. The big Norwegian, I think that was about Pavlovic, the centre half as well. That was about it.
You've been back to the Faroe Islands lately?
No. Last time I was there was when Trapattoni's team played there.
Okay.
I was last year, yeah.
Just like
I'd like to go back.
We'd like to go anywhere right now, Brian.
Pardon? It won't be going now soon, that's for sure.
No.
We can't go anywhere now.
Jeez.
Stubbs can't go anywhere.
Even an old 6 a.m. flight to go to watch Southampton against Burnley or something, we take it on a Sunday morning at this stage.
For sure.
We wouldn't even complain about it.
Not at all.
Just a couple of results. Arsenal have beaten Liverpool on penalties in the Carabao Cup in the last couple of minutes. Finished scoreless after 90 minutes. Harry Wilson missed the crucial penalty for Liverpool. Joe Willock put Arsenal through to the draw, which takes place shortly for the quarter-final. Stoke and Brentford also through today. And in the Europa League, so with Dundalk we know through, Celtic beat Sarajevo 1-0. Rangers beat Galatasaray 2-1. And Spurs, 7-2 winners against Maccabi Haifa. 3 of them for Harry Kane, 2 of them for Giovanni Lo Celso, 1 for Lucas Moura, and 1 a penalty kick in the final minute for one Dele Alli, who came off the bench for Tottenham in that one. So they're in that draw as well. Tomorrow, you're going to be doing Spurs on Sunday, Brian, in one of our live match commentaries against Manchester United. We've seen quite a bit of them already in our live commentary games here and Off the Ball so far this season. Is it slowly but surely coming together for Mourinho? They were obviously impressive and should have won well at the weekend until the controversy against Newcastle.
Well, they got, that was a bit of a disaster for them, losing the penalty late on. They should have been out of sight and won the game well. Newcastle were poor on the day, unadventurous, and created nothing until they put Andy Carroll on and bashed a few balls forward. Andy appealed for a couple of penalties before they got the one they eventually got. But, that's the problem when you're only leading 1-0, and we talked about that during the commentary night. And so I think overall, a disappointing start to only have 4 points. Is it coming together for them? I don't know. Again, you look at the team he put out tonight. He put out a very strong team tonight. I'd say nearly his first 11 from what I remember when I had a quick glance at the side during the Dundalk game. It looked like it was nearly his best team. So, that's how seriously he was taking that match to get into the Europa League, because he knows that's the route to the Champions League next year, as other teams have treated it in recent years. Manchester United and Arsenal have had to use that route to have a go to try and get in. So I think the win on Tuesday was important on penalties against Chelsea. That keeps them going in 2 cup competitions. Realistically, in the league, it's hard to see them having enough quality. I think they'll struggle to make the top 4. And I think this is an assurance that he's doing his best in the cup competition, putting out relatively strong teams.
That's a big game on Sunday now. If there's a winner for whichever team loses, it's suddenly a really poor start to the season.
Yeah, for sure, because Manchester United's been very mixed start as well. A lot of criticism. The Crystal Palace defeat was a big downer for them, that they were beaten so convincingly. Yeah, I think they need Manchester United. I think needed even more than Spurs, because the expectancy level is so much higher on them, so much more pressure on Solskjaer. Mourinho will get away with it if Spurs aren't doing as well. He'll talk himself through it. I think, and no supporters in the ground. He can play whatever way he likes. In fairness to them, they took the game to Newcastle Sunday and played well, and it was good play. And Højbjerg looked like he was finding a bit of form. The combination in general looked well. Bergwijn, when he came out, and Son wasn't as good as Son, but Son and Kane were really in form. Lucas Moura on the right. I'd be doubtful about the midfield. I'd be doubtful about Winks and Højbjerg, that they're the top quality. Matt Doherty has a bit to do as a fullback and as a defensive on the defensive side of his game, and we've just wait and see how Reguilon does when he gets in, if he gets in ahead of Davies. Davies played well at the weekend.
Jurgen Klopp isn't listening, so you can answer honestly, John. Were they sloppy?
I think actually what Roy Keane was saying. He described it as sloppy. I think it meant when Lacazette got through twice. and that was from what was the old offside trap. Like now, it's called the high line.
Yeah.
Right. So I think he could have been more critical in saying this high line is not good, which it's not. And Liverpool do play it a lot, but because they're on top so much, they're not exposed to it. But they're exposed now and again, and they were exposed twice the other night. I think it was Lacazette got through. So they weren't being sloppy. I think it's a bad system to be playing.
But he was offside for one of them, John. So is that not actually just really good defending that they're keeping their offside trap to perfection? So even though play continues...
Listen, you cannot get an offside trap to perfection. It's impossible to do it in football. Now, he was offside once, but was he offside the second time?
No.
And how many times have we seen Liverpool in that position where somebody does get through and they're not offside? Now, in other words, it should never happen, Nathan.
Yeah.
It should never happen. So I think Liverpool, and especially with Liverpool, they have the defenders with Van Dijk and Gomez who are quick. They're all quick. And it's a risky thing. When you put your hand up for offside, you don't know. And they've been caught now and again because somebody somewhere just goes to sleep for that half yard, that half second, and they're through. And there's no need to do it, especially from Liverpool's with the players that they have. So I don't describe it as sloppy. I think they were being kind to him. But I think what happened with Klopp was that he didn't hear what Roy Keane said. He heard the word sloppy, but actually Keane was very, very... very good to the Liverpool team in terms of he said they were played really well, and they were quite rightly too. I thought Liverpool were excellent the other night, but I think he just heard the word sloppy, and actually Carragher said sloppy as well. I think he might be more annoyed if Roy Keane had gone into a little bit more detail about playing this high line.
Do you like that spikiness from Klopp?
I don't think it's needed. No. I mean, he didn't hear what Roy Keane said for a start. All he heard was word sloppy, and then all he could have said, "What do you mean by sloppy?" You know, like he said, we were great, we were this, we were like, okay. So, but that it doesn't mean that Lacazette didn't have a chance in the match. And the word sloppy, I mean, that's not being very critical, is it? Being a bit sloppy. But he didn't hear what Roy Keane said. I mean, Roy he took it out of... He took the wrong meaning from it in many ways, because Roy Keane said, "Oh, Liverpool were really terrific tonight, and they were sloppy a couple of times," which they were. Actually, it was worse than sloppy.
It almost seemed Ferguson-esque that he was sort of gunning for a fight and, well, being out there defending his team no matter what is the message he wanted to get across.
Well, I can understand that, but Ferguson wasn't always right in his behaviour.
I didn't say he was right.
Well, I mean, touchy to say the least. Well, Klopp was wrong because he pulled up Keane for saying something that wasn't at all met in the right way. I mean, Keane said they were a bit sloppy on a couple of occasions, but they played exceptionally well. They were really, really good tonight. He didn't hear that. All he heard was sloppy. You know, could have asked Roy Keane, well, what do you mean by sloppy?
Yeah.
But anyway, that's by the way.
Just on that high line, John.
A lot of managers are very touchy, and I think he was too touchy in that situation.
Yeah, maybe
anyway,
we'll see.
No big deal.
No, it was probably ended up being blown slightly out of proportion, as these things are. Just to go back to that high line then and the way Liverpool play, Klopp obviously feels the risk is worth it. When you watch the way they play and the way they try and push teams back so far, and when teams now, as they do, try and play it out from the back, Arsenal did it, Chelsea did it, and they're playing it around their own 6-yard box, and Liverpool are right up. Do they, if they want to push that far up in teams, do they not have to play a high line?
No, because when I was a lad, Jimmy Murphy was a great coach, and his attitude was there should never be a certain distance between the back and the front. Do you know what I mean, Nathan? There's a distance, maybe it could be 30, 40 yards, between the back and the front. In other words, they're not too far back, and they're not too far forward. Like the high line now, it's an offside trap. In the old days, it was called an offside trap. And there's no need to do it, in my opinion, Nathan. There's no, because Liverpool have a terrific team, and they're usually on the attack anyway, right? But occasionally they're not. And any time I've seen them, it's touch. When you're doing that high line, when there's no need to do it.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
OTB Sports, in partnership with Cadbury FC, have kicked off a brand new series of in-depth chats with some of the biggest names in football.
Gary Neville just rocks up tomorrow and says, yeah, I'll be a coach. No.
The third episode sees Gary Neville and Teddy Sheringham sit down for an in-depth chat, which will be brought to you on OTB social channels and OTB Sports Radio on Monday the 5th of October. Check out CadburyFC.com for updates on promotions and giveaways.
Into sports.
20 yards out, Ursha shoot, oh, what a goal from Fabinho! Wow!
And get into the all-new OTB Sports app.
I think when he apologises to me, I probably will say hello to him, yeah. No.
Videos, sports news, live scores, interviews.
If Fabregas is going to come up to me in the street and give me some of the mouth that he would have given me on a football pitch, what, did he get a slap?
Plus, exclusive content on the OTB Podcast Network. The biggest names in sports. Ready when you are. Search OTB Sports on your app store and download it now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
All right. Just gone 8 o'clock on this Friday morning. You are watching OTB AM. We're delighted to have you along with us. Do keep your comments coming into us. Brian Kerr and John Giles in conversation there with Nathan last night. You heard just before the break, and you can check out that full piece on otbsports.com. Owen Shane from the Wilds of Kerry. Good morning to you.
From the wilds of the Dublin studio, good morning to you.
How are you getting on?
Welcome back to your humble abode.
It's been a while. It feels nice to be at a professional broadcasting location.
We're going to miss whatever that match programme was over your right shoulder. That was certainly my highlight of lockdown. You've set foot in the office for the first time in 6 months. What's the experience been? What's it been like for you?
It's not the first time in the office, but not far off it. Normal. Very normal, like very different, obviously, from what we would have expected in terms of the busyness on a Friday morning here. We'd normally be in at sort of 6 a.m. Lots of people milling around the place, busyness, guests coming in, and it's not that anymore. It's definitely nowhere near that, and it's the old cliche now. It's a brand new norm, but fine. Like no problems.
It strikes me that you were somebody who would have missed your city centre array of coffee shops quite a bit over the last few months.
I've gone deep on the coffee thing on. This is where I'm at. I'm at this morning. I'm now a Flask owner. And,
you've just fallen in love with your home brew thing, and now you're bringing it in.
I got it. Early into lockdown, one of the biggest, I'd spoken before about early in lockdown, I went off for a few days, wasn't able to cope with anything at all. I was having a proper meltdown. But one of the things that got me right back on track home was the purchase of a coffee dripper. And good coffee after that has really helped. And I'm going to mention the brand 3FE. Unbelievable coffee. And yeah, so that's what I'm at home now. Every day I'm twice a day getting the brew kit out. I actually made a mistake and I bought a kilo of beans and a hand grinder, and it really was you're not going to be making coffee in a rush with a hand grinder. It's not good news, and you're making 2 or 3 cups at a go for myself and my colleagues at home. It's just not good news. It's not good news. So I'm out of my grinding technique is it's I can feel this clip being this statement being clipped as we speak. My grinding technique is bang on, as strong as it's ever been. And I'm at the end of that kilo bag just this week, and I've got some actual ground coffee now and can make coffee in a hurry again. It's fantastic. People are delighted to wake up this morning after Dundalk have won a €3 million game to hear me banging on about the hand grinder. Yeah, so the football last night, we were watching it on. It was good stuff. You didn't need to be jacked up in coffee to get some enjoyment out of that last night.
No, very, very enjoyable. It's, I guess, the stakes. We're at such a height last night that you always felt that there was going to be this possible outcome where people would be very, very disappointed at the end, because it's not just sporting disappointment that comes with the opportunity of last night. There would have been so many other elements of the disappointment as well, of not having the €3 million cash injection, which every sporting organisation at the moment could so badly do with. And to have that on a silver platter and to have it taken away, that can't not have come with a huge deal of pressure for them last night, a huge deal of nerves. I'm sure it came as a result of that. And when that third goal goes in, when you feel that they've actually killed the tie, because there was a sense before that, especially in the lead up to the goal from Klaksvik last night, that this thing could go down to the wire, that we could be in a situation where the momentum was going in such a way where it could go 2-2 rather than 3-1. So when it does go 3-1, it was just this release from the sideline, this release from all the Dundalk fans, I'd imagine, and like they're facing into a Europa League draw this morning, and that the beautiful luxury of Giovagnoli being able to talk about Jose Mourinho last night is just such a great thing. I mean, it's like he'd love to take him on the sideline. He'd love to take all these big managers on the sideline. The fact that he has an opportunity now to talk about that, and perhaps as a football club not be concerned about where that next Euro is going to come from for the next couple of months at least, you'd hope is a real positive.
Yeah, there was a time where managers would talk about, I'm really looking forward to take on the giants of Juventus or Milan, or I'd really looking forward to taking on Jose Mourinho. You're right, was the line last night. Just in terms of the game, we're going to talk to Shane Keegan about this shortly, the Dundalk coach, but in terms of the game, it was definitely looking at it in the first half. I was quite concerned about, I mean, it was great to see Dundalk obviously get that lead going in at the break, but like they were such an organised team, and the set pieces was a thing that was really spoken about KI in advance, and we need to watch out for these, but they were such an organised team. They were really compressed, compact in defence. Whenever Dundalk tried to put the squeeze on them, it was like really difficult to make much headway. They were trying that sort of long ball, diagonal or otherwise, over the top, out to the left wing. Were overcooking it a lot, wasn't really coming off for them. And there was that, and then obviously they got ahead. But even then at 2-0, like you're sort of alluding there was that 7, 8, 10 minutes where KI got it back to 2-1, deservedly so at that time, and you thought, Jesus, the momentum is with them here. They're really on top of Dundalk, and this could go either way now. Definitely.
It definitely felt that if there was one team who was likely to score next, probably would have been KI at that point. But they kind of persevered, and I guess like it was slightly against the run of play, but there was also a game plan. And I think Shane Keegan made that point with us last Friday morning as well, that he knew that there was some serious footballers in that team, and the way they would have to set up might actually, at times, have to be a little bit about containing the opposition, and that's kind of what happened. Being efficient at set pieces, it goes to show just how vital kind of a cog in the wheel that can be for a team in any sort of cup competition on a one knockout game. How quite often it might not come down to it, but as it turned out last night, it proved to be vital. It would have been interesting to see what would have happened if there was a crowd last night and the game had gone in exactly the same manner. You definitely feel like, of course, there was a crowd, there wouldn't have been all the serious financial implications because COVID probably wouldn't exist. But forgetting that for a moment, like does the nervousness actually penetrate through the crowd? Is there kind of a groans after the first goal goes in? This kind of impending sense of doom? I'm not sure, but I definitely think that there's an ability to shake down those sort of sucker punches a little bit more when there isn't 50,000 people in the 40,000 people in the stadium around you, Yeah, and there's a lot of money coming in now. There's the just short of 3 million quid that will come in now automatically. There's 200 grand if they can manage to draw a game in the Europa League group stages. If they can manage to win one, there's 570k. There's suddenly a lot of money coming into Dundalk, and a big part of the conversation, which will happen from here on out, is how that money gets spent. And I noted in the UK this morning, last week, we were talking about the UK government asking the richest clubs in the Premier League to help prop up some of the lower or less financed clubs, if we could put it that way. It'll be interesting to see now with that vast swathes of money that are coming into Dundalk. I'm sure it's not in their thoughts, but there are a lot of clubs that are struggling around, never mind about outside the League of Ireland, but certainly within it. And if there's a possibility that some of those vast swathes could be funneled off in another direction. I assume I know the answer, but it's probably a conversation worth having at some point. The other thing that we want to talk about a little bit later on is a story that you broke on OTBsports.com last night in relation to New York GAA and the flouting of guidelines. Yeah, dual screening it last night. Unfortunately, Liverpool Arsenal didn't even get a screen for most of last night because bashed away a few words on a story which you can read on OTBsports.com. New York GAA escaping a ban after the large crowd gathers at Gaelic Park. There's a video up there if you want to see the scenes from last weekend. An incredible weekend of GAA over there. You had St. Barnabas win a county final with an all New York or American-born team for the first time ever. So that there was a great news story to come out, but unfortunately, Gaelic Park has seen crowds in the stadium for the last few weeks, and their biggest crowd of the year last Sunday. Basically, in New York, you're not allowed to have a crowd. The Yankees are playing down the road. They're not allowed to have a single supporter in there. That is the rule, and the New York GAA have been breaking that. So there was a fear that they were going to be kicked out of Gaelic Park. Manhattan College essentially leases them the ground, but crunch meetings over the last couple of days means that they have not gone down that path, but they have pledged to not have any more spectators in as they run off women's competitions and a couple of other competitions that need to be played over the next couple of weeks.
All right, well, we're going to have more on that story in just a little bit and more developments. Before we let you off, apologies if you've had this conversation already, but can you actually play that piano?
Yeah, I did have this conversation with her. If you asked me 10 years ago, I would have been able to play the piano for you. And sadly, it is a talent that I allowed to leave my body.
Do you think is there a possibility that if you at some point this morning between now and 10 o'clock turn around and try to tickle the ivories there, that it might just float back to you?
No, I'm afraid not. I genuinely wish, I honestly would go through the embarrassment of doing that on air if I had that talent. I would actually give that trade-off, believe it or not. But unfortunately, I can't. I would say if I taught myself again, then it might come back. But I can't just start playing all of a sudden. It's not like a bike. I thought it was. That's why I gave it up, but it's not. It
might not be the last time we'll ask you this morning, and we'll hold you to that. If not this morning, at least by next week, Owen, you might have sort of done some sort of a refresher and give the audience what they want. It is 11 minutes past 8 on this Friday morning, and a very good morning to you. It's OTB AM, live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead, and we are delighted that you could join us this morning. We have lots of good stuff coming your way. We're going to talk to Shane Keegan in just a couple of moments' time to get his thoughts, obviously, on a huge night for Dundalk last night, and he is the Dundalk coach, one of the Dundalk coaches, and we're going to get his thoughts on all of that and exactly the Europa League group stage draw at midday today. So what is he looking forward to from that? We're going to speak to Jenny Murphy a little bit later in the show. Former Ireland international, new initiative out to attract under-20s into the women's game. So we'll talk to her a little bit about that and about the transference of skills and plenty more as well. Phil Egan's, about 9:30, Phil Egan's TV digest will be here. The lads making a case for what games to watch or not. More watch, it has to be said. Phil Thompson will talk to us before that at about 9:10. Liverpool out of the League Cup last night, but so much to talk about from a Liverpool point of view at the minute, including Thiago or not, and the Champions League draw obviously during the week as well, and their start to the season generally. We'll bring the newspapers as well at 10 to 9 or thereabouts. Lots of good stuff in those this morning, including a nice little yarn from Pillar Caffrey in relation to Darren Connolly and his retirement. So that is all coming up over the next little while. Shane Hannon, good morning to you.
Good morning, lads. How are things?
From the wilds of Kerry to the wilds of Monaghan. How's life?
Not too bad. No pianos behind me, no musical instruments, no musical talent whatsoever.
Well, I was just going to say, Shane, you strike me as a fella who's probably got something going on there in the background, like a secret ukulele player or something like that.
No talents. You've been talking about your grinding talents this morning, Adrian, and Owen's piano talents. So unfortunately, no talents for me. So it's all quiet on the Monaghan front.
That will never not be funny. Right, we're going to talk. You're going to talk Dundalk first.
Yeah, for the second time in the club's history, we have to talk about the town, I guess. Dundalk have reached the group stages of the Europa League. The Lily Whites ground out that win against KI of the Faroe Islands 3-1 at the Aviva Stadium last night. Dundalk, probably the better side in the first half, took the lead just after the half-hour mark when Sean Murray headed home. Daniel Cleary made it 2-0 just after half-time, but KI scored with 25 minutes to play to set up quite a tense finish. But the game put to bed then with a goal in the 79th minute from Daniel Kelly. The draw will take place, as you mentioned, Adrian, just after midday today. Tottenham, Arsenal, Roma, Rangers, Celtic and Leicester are all potential opponents for Dundalk. Here's what defender Brian Gartland would like to see when the draw is made.
Spurs' new stadium, obviously, with all that, and it'd be nice, but listen, ultimately, you want to get games as well. Pot one, the seeds, you're going to be up against it, and there's always the risk of big teams turn you over too easy and that, but we want teams that we can compete against and give us the best chance of picking up points, and like we did in 2016.
Celtic were 1-0 winners away to FK Sarajevo, and Rangers beat Galatasaray by 2-1. Spurs secured their place in the group stage with a 7-2 win at home to Maccabi Haifa. Harry Kane scored a hat-trick in that game. Tottenham boss Jose Mourinho feels the win was important for many reasons.
A fundamental match for us, a match that means a few million pounds, and means that we are in the group phase of a competition that we have a ambitions.
Meanwhile, Benfica say a deal has been reached with Tottenham for the London side to sign Carlos Vinicius on loan for the rest of the season. It'll cost Spurs £2.7 million, with the club having the option to make the move permanent for £40.1 million. 25-year-old Vinicius scored 24 goals last season and will serve as backup to Harry Kane. Meanwhile, Arsenal boss Mikel Arteta was delighted with his team's desire as they progressed to the quarter-finals of the Carabao Cup last night. The North London club beat Liverpool 5-4 on penalties to set up a last-8 tie with Manchester City. The game finished 0-0 after 90 minutes, but Arteta thinks his team were the stronger.
We competed much better in seconds, third balls, some of the duels. The level of aggression that we had as well, the way we pressed them really, really high and put them under a lot of pressure was exceptional, I think.
Arsenal will meet holders Manchester City in the last 8 that will take place just before Christmas. Stoke beat Aston Villa 1-0 and will be at home to Tottenham in the quarters. Brentford's reward for their 3-0 win over Fulham is a meeting with Newcastle, while Manchester United will be away to Everton. In Manchester City's women's team beat Arsenal 2-1 to set up an FA Cup final against Everton. Steph Houghton and Sam Lewis were on target for City last night as they took a step closer to defending their title. The final takes place at Wembley on November the 1st. Shamrock Rovers can establish an 11-point lead at the summit of the SSE Electricity League Premier Division with victory at home to Sligo Rovers this evening. Kick-off at Tallaght Stadium is at 7:45. Derry City play Waterford. That's at the Ryan McBride Brandywell from 5:45. And both of last season's finalists are in action on the opening night of rugby's new Guinness Pro 14 season. Meanwhile, champions Leinster welcome the Dragons to the ODS. 600 Ulster fans will be allowed inside Kingspan Stadium in Belfast for their meeting with Benetton. Both of those games getting underway at 8:15. To tennis, world number 1 Novak Djokovic is safely through in the French Open singles after a straight sets win over Ricardas Berankis. But women's second seed Karolina Pliskova is out after losing to Jelena Ostapenko. 12-time men's champion Rafa Nadal takes on Italian Stefano Travaglia in his third-round match later at Roland Garros, while women's top seed Simona Halep faces American Amanda Anisimova. Meanwhile, Middlesbrough manager Neil Warnock has urged people who are flouting coronavirus guidelines to think about their elderly relatives. The 71-year-old has fully recovered after testing positive for COVID-19 last month. It comes as US President Donald Trump confirmed this morning that both he and First Lady Melania Trump have tested positive and are self-isolating. Warnock believes his daily fitness routines helped him beat the illness, but says he knows it can be deadly for people of his age.
When I see the University at Coventry having 200 people having a party, you just get the odd patch like that, and that makes me disappointed. There's no thought whatsoever there. This is a killer disease, especially for older people. And I'd just like us to be a little bit more responsible, if I'm honest.
And finally for me this morning, lads, some golf. Graham McDowell is 2 under par and Padraig Harrington is level par heading into round 2 of the Scottish Open. Lee Westwood currently leading the field on 9 under.
Come on, Shane. Thanks a million. Shane Hannon on the line there with the latest on what's happening in the world of live sport for you this morning. It's 18 minutes past 8. A very good morning to you. Lots of comments coming in, some of them in relation to Dundalk last night. So if you've got thoughts about that, it's impacting the League of Ireland. If you're from Dundalk, whatever they might be, get them into us this morning, because that's exactly where we're headed now. We're about to get into our weekly post-massive European night check-in with the Dundalk coach Shane Keegan. First of all, the man of the hour, Filippo Giovagnoli.
The feeling is unbelievable now. I am just a little bit, upset with the performance that could be better, but tonight we were so nervous. We were feeling the game so much, and listen, it's normal. It was a final. It was a so important game, and you can see players nervous when in the build-up, when you start to miss passes, you make decisions, with the first touch is not clean, and the field was really fast, but at the end of the day, what is important tonight is the result, is get through. It's important. We made history, right? We are in the history now, so we are proud of that. Yeah, no, I didn't say anything. They were celebrating. I let them be. Somebody was dancing, so I let them be. They have to celebrate. This is their moment. I call me and Giuseppe facilitator, help them to perform. That's why tonight, as a coach, you can't be happy as a coach with the performance, but with the effort, with the willing to get through, to work together, yes, of course. But with the technical performance, not really. But listen, again, what is important is the result. We are through. We are happy, and we have just to keep going to work. I am so happy. I am so happy. For me, for Giuseppe, for our families, that they support us For our friends in New York at Metoval, in my academy, they support us. My village in Italy, Apecchio, they are going crazy. We are happy, of course, but the most important now is important the club. You know, that is this result. I think is going to help the club to build a new journey, right? Something special for the future. No, tomorrow we are off. So I know that they're gonna watch the draw, and I'm gonna watch the draw with Giuseppe. Usually we watch me and him, and it's so funny when we watch the draw with him. It's unbelievable. But yes, I'm looking forward to see what we're gonna have.
Yeah, that's the Dundalk manager Filippo Giovagnoli, and Shane Keegan, the Dundalk background coach, joins us on the line as well. Good morning to you, Shane. Again, as always on a Friday morning, we're making a habit of this.
Yeah, it's a habit I'd be more than happy to keep, that's for sure, yeah.
A day off, the top man says, is that what it looks like for you?
Day off for me, not a hope in hell. Are you joking me? I've a presentation to put together on Finn Harps for tomorrow morning. So I have. So yeah, it'll be a full steam ahead on that front for me, I'm afraid.
What was it like last night?
Brilliant, absolutely fantastic. It really was. I mean, look, as Filippo has said, I think it was far from our greatest performance, that's for sure. Thought it probably took about a half an hour for us to get motoring at all. Last 15 minutes of the first half, we were really good. It was probably about the only period of the game where we were really good, if we're completely honest about it. But look, on a night like last night, it really was all about the result, and you know, it probably at 2-1 looked a bit hairy for a little while, that's for sure. And even before that, just our overall performance, there was just a lot of nervousness in it, I suppose. But that's, you know, I think that has to be reasonably understandable. But and even the 3-1, I mean, Gary Rogers made an unbelievable save within a minute or two of us going 3-1 up. That could have pulled it back to 3-2 very quickly, and you're back with your hairy moments again. But look, as I say, even though it wasn't our best performance, I think we were full value for the win at the same time, you know.
Yeah, it's probably not much point in asking an opposition analyst if he was surprised by what happened last night, because that would be probably against your job description. But certainly, like you say, that opening half hour for that 10-minute spell in the second half, like they were very impressive, weren't they? They were very compact at the back, made it very difficult for you to get into your stride.
Yeah, absolutely. No, look, to be honest with you, it was from an opposition analysis point of view, it was a great game to have, because previous games you were guessing, would this fella be in or would that fella be in, and will they go with a back 3 tonight or will they go with a back 4? That was another thing we were trying to figure out in previous games. These boys are rock solid. These boys are rock solid. They play the same formation, the same shape. They've had the exact same starting 11 for the previous 3-4 games. We knew exactly what we were coming up against last night, which is a help in terms of preparing everybody for it, and everybody knowing exactly, you know, what's going to happen and how. But knowing what the opposition will do and trying to stop them doing what they're good at is two very different things. And you know, the set pieces, I heard you talking about it earlier. The set pieces are a huge part of their game plan. There's no doubt, and you know, it's not exactly the biggest secret in the world that it's an area that we had been struggling on. We had been struggling badly on set pieces. I think 5 of our last 6 goals we conceded were set pieces. We changed how we went about that last night, and I thought that made a big difference to us. And another, I suppose, interesting thing on it is these boys were doing very well in their own domestic league. They've only had one bad result in the last couple of months, really. But it was interesting when I went back and looked at the goals from that bad result. The phrase I used yesterday, because we'd been kind of comparing them to Stoke under Tony Pulis, the one bad result they had where they were bet 6-2, they had actually got out-stoked, because every goal they conceded was a corner, a free, a long throw. So we thought, right, well, let's stop talking about how much of a threat they are from set pieces, and let's actually focus on, can we go and find a weakness in that on the other side of things for ourselves to exploit. So for Dan Cleary to get a goal for us from a set piece like that was satisfying as well, you know. Yeah,
because they're a team that, certainly in Europe anyway, that like operate on very little possession and still manage to score a hatful of goals. Like, I mean, as a opposition analyst, that's where do you begin with that? And as you say, like, you know exactly what you're going to get with them. That doesn't necessarily make it any easier to beat them.
Yeah, exactly. They're ruthlessly efficient, and they're a bit unusual in how they go about it. They pick players for very specific roles. Like, if you're watching a Premier League game of soccer in England and a team are playing with a diamond, and essentially it's kind of a diamond. It's a diamond when they have it, and it flattens out then when they don't have it. But the guy at the tip of the diamond is traditionally the most creative force within the team. The guy they were playing at the tip of the diamond is an incredibly energetic, hardworking. He's played most of his career at centre back, but because of the way they play and getting on second balls and trying to disrupt your flow, that's the kind of job description they've gone with for a guy that they want at the tip of the diamond. And so it's an unusual challenge. It's a very, very different challenge to what we would face, I suppose, in our own league. And yeah, it took a lot of work by the players, a lot of work by Filippo coming up with a game plan to try and come up with something that was never ever going to be easy, but we got there.
Yeah. Just and on your analysis of it then, Shane, we talked a little bit about your own role last night, but so are you looking at those clips of KI in the lead into it and presenting that back by way of, listen, here's what they're going to do, or are you presenting it back by way of, here's what they're going to do and here's what we're going to get around that?
Yeah, the second. You're trying to do the second. There's no point just presenting, if you're going to present one of the weaknesses, well, then you have to describe, okay, and here's how we're going to try and take advantage of that weakness. And if you're presenting a strength, you have to say, and here's how we're going to try and guard against that strength. So that is definitely part of the role. And at the same time, always conscious that you don't want to overburden fellas with information. Some fellas, when I'm looking down into the group, some fellas I can clearly see by their body language, are taking in absolutely every word I'm saying. And then other fellas, I'd probably have to remind them 5 minutes before we walk onto the pitch who exactly we're playing against, We
all have people like that in our lives, Shane. That's the way life works. Come here, Brian Kerr, I don't know if you've listened to too much of it yet, and maybe hold off for a few hours, but he's obviously looking at it from the broader point of view. He did mention at one point that somebody from Dundalk had been on to him about for his own thoughts about obviously football in the Faroes, and he identified the weakness in the keeper. He wasn't great, was he?
Yeah, that was me. Yeah. It was I gave Brian a shout on Tuesday there, so I did. Yeah, just to get a few bits and pieces off him. And look, he was fairly bang on with any of the info he gave me as well. In fairness to him, the pitch he had highlighted that the pitch was going to be our biggest friend, really. I think having gone to games out there, he was kind of saying that a lot they're used to playing on match boxes, really, in terms of the size of the pitches, and a lot of them being Astros. So we needed to try and take advantage of that, and I suppose we certainly did come the third goal. So we did, but yeah, he was very, very helpful on that front. I did see the interview. He wasn't exactly jumping for joy for us, but at the same time, he helped play a small little role in it.
Yeah. How deep does his Faroese knowledge go?
Yeah, look, I would like to think we knew everything that we needed to know. As I say, it was a hell of a lot easier because there's such a steady lineup. So it was, as I say, in the previous rounds, there was a lot of chopping and changing. There was the Andorran side that we played Inter. I mean, they had a mad setup where they had a kind of some sort of relationship with FC Andorra, who play in La Liga, and there was players bouncing between the two clubs, and you couldn't figure out who was currently an Inter player and who was currently an FC Andorra player. So that was really, really tough. Whereas say this time it was a hell of a lot more straightforward. We called the 11 that we thought would play did play. They played in exactly the manner that we expected them to play. So but look, like you've said yourselves, that doesn't necessarily make it easier. I mean, one thing I would say, for example, like so the guy who scored the goal, the big 17, he's 6'4". He's very much the focal point of their build-up play. But he's we did a piece yesterday on him, and I think it was Sean Hoare might have said to me, Shane, he's left-footed, is he? And I said, yep, absolutely. And we showed a couple of goals, they'd come off his left foot, showed one or two good crosses he'd put in, they'd scored off his left foot. So when he receives that ball last night, like, the boys did absolutely everything they could to shift him onto his right foot, and then he buries it in the back of the net off his right foot. So sometimes all the analysis in the world doesn't help,
Yeah, you mentioned the rest of Brian Kerr's quotes last night, and whether or not you agree with the tone. I guess the general sentiment was that the money And the windfall that has now occurred needs to go back into the facilities in Dundalk. Like, he did call Oriel Park an embarrassment, even at League of Ireland level. It's dreadful, is what he said. But I guess the general tone of reinvesting that money now back into the club is surely something that everybody goes along with.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, Brian isn't saying anything too far off the mark there. Everybody, those associated with the club, know the facilities aren't good enough, and you would like to think that there's definitely going to be some sort of an attempt made to use the money to improve things on that respect. Just, I suppose, given my own interests and I would have been, still am kind of involved with underage soccer a lot and have a big interest in that. I'd love to see a lot of the money go into the underage structure and trying to improve the underage structure in the club, because, you've got a lot of people doing the very best they can in the underage structure, but, I don't think anybody would argue against the fact that we're a hell of a distance behind the likes of Bohemians and Shamrock Rovers, who are doing fantastic work at underage level and consistently producing some great players. I think I'd love to see us try to funnel some of the money in that direction that would try and bring us on a par with them in that sense. Whether it gets spread across the wider league, I have absolutely no idea what'll happen on that front or what way all that'll go. But yeah, look, it's important that it's used in the right way. That's for sure.
When you mention underage structures there, where does that money go first? Is it into the facilities? Is it into the coaches? Where do you spend that money, like when you use that term, underage structures?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of everything. It's just trying to create an overall setup that's enticing for young players. Now, look, geographically, we're going to be at a disadvantage, no matter what way you go about it. But I do think at the same time there could be, an awful lot done to help the coaches make, I suppose, our underage structure a more appealing place to try and pull. I mean, essentially, if Dundalk are going to be one of the biggest clubs in the country for the foreseeable future, then it'd be great to have some local Dundalk players in that underage structure, but really, you've got to be pulling from the whole country. And I don't know, is there a possibility? I would have been over at St Mirren before, and they were on our pro licence. They were one of the first clubs in Scotland to manage to establish a stay overnight facility, a boarding facility for their underage players. I don't know, could the club go that far in terms of trying to do something like that players can move up to Dundalk and stay somewhere together and train and get their education and stuff like that. I know that's all kind of, big picture stuff, but it would be brilliant to see something like that happen, because, there's only so much of a pool in the immediate area in Dundalk, and I think for a big club like Dundalk, they need to be pulling from as far, really the whole country.
That's a really interesting point, and it's a full acceptance of the fact that maybe half the kids who come up, I don't know what the percentage would be, wouldn't actually make it to the very top level, either fully professional in the League of Ireland or whatever the path may be, and actually offering education and a structured way of life to allow both of those aspects of their life to continue. That can't possibly be a negative. It'll actually be quite an appealing prospect for any talented young Dublin kid.
Oh, look, any structure that you'd bring in terms of trying to entice players has got to, in my opinion, include some form of an education pathway. Absolutely has to, because as you say, I think the current research is that, those who sign scholarships, I think there's 3% of them left in the game by the age of 21 over there. So, I don't know, could you get Dundalk IT involved? I know they are to a certain extent already. Could you get them even more involved in that pathway? Get local schools involved? It'd be really, really brilliant and make it a real viable option, that here's a dual career pathway that we've created up here, and that could entice fellas from, far beyond Dublin. You'd be looking to pull them from literally all four corners of the country.
Yeah, it'll be one of the most interesting things to see how all that plays out. And obviously the group who own Dundalk are running a business as well, so like how much do they look to reinvest in all of those levels? Like Brian himself said, it'll be interesting to watch, and we'll see how it obviously all unfolds. And the very idea of obviously making Dundalk, like a lot of that sort of carrot to bring in underage players and to facilitate Dundalk becoming one of the best teams consistently, or the best in the country, is obviously tied into what you're doing at the minute and the achievements that you have at the minute, and dominating the back pages today and being the main talking point in shows like this. Leicester, Milan, Celtic, Spurs, Arsenal, Eindhoven. What are you thinking?
Yeah, look, so I'm a Spurs fan, so it's fairly obvious enough, although I'm also a Celtic fan. I suppose going into last night, depending on who qualified, the way the coefficients would work out, if all of the favourites had won last night, Tottenham, Spurs would have been in Pool 1 and Celtic would have been in Pool 2, which is what I was hoping for and wishing, and then, thinking, could we possibly end up with the two of them? They're now both in Pool 1, so if I get one or the other, I'd be happy enough on that front. We were in the dressing room last night in the middle of all the celebrations after it, and we managed to get up. We got a few cans in and that, so we could have a few drinks in the dressing room before we had to kind of disperse. And one of the boys got up a live stream of the AC Milan penalty shootout. So Giuseppe is a diehard AC Milan fan. So obviously was hoping and praying that we draw them, but first he needed them to get through. So I swear to God, he did more leaping and jumping and roaring and screaming watching the penalty shootout than he did during our game, I think. So from his point of view, that's definitely the draw that he wants. But look, wouldn't it just be fantastic to have a few of those big names coming across and us getting the head off to a few places like that? So hopefully one or two big names coming out there, all right.
You'd rather that than the easier tie of some of the lesser known names?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I was naming out the clubs that I'd like, and then one of the boys did turn around and say, Jesus, will you give us some sort of a hope? Will you at least give us one minnow in the group that we can try and pick up a few points from? So yeah, look, you'd probably maybe two big fish and one maybe slightly lesser known name maybe might be a decent balance to it.
Yeah, I think we'd all, from the outsiders looking in, obviously we'd be a bit along those lines too, like to see some of those bigger clubs coming in. Shane, we kicked off an awful conversation last weekend when we got into our chat about whether you were going to play Rovers at the weekend or not, and it took a life of its own after that, and obviously the game went ahead, and so much as it was. The rest of the season now looks like absolute carnage, and including if the schedule stays the way it is, there's one of the Europa League games is going to be followed 24 hours later by the last round of games in the domestic league season, which have to go ahead with all teams playing at the same time, which is effectively an immovable feast unless they move the entire day's schedule. What are your thoughts about how to manage all this now?
Yep, it's going to be pretty insane, all right, so it is. But look, we have a big squad. We were unfortunate last week. I think the team that we put out last week would have been capable with mixing it with the vast majority of the League of Ireland. We were just unfortunate that we were running into a team as strong as Rovers and in the kind of form that they are. Look, we're even before the Europa League starts, our biggest break is going to be from this. So we play Harps this Sunday and then we have Pats on Friday. That's the only 5-day break we're going to have for the next, I think, 2 months, pretty much. So we're looking at pretty much every 3 days from there on, which is going to raise some questions or some challenges for us, certainly. So it is. But look, it's the situation we've put ourselves in. It's the situation we wanted to be in. So now we just have to deal with it. We showed again last night. You don't like singling out players, I suppose, in any kind of scenario. But Daniel Kelly last night coming off the bench to score the third goal for us. If I could pick one player, Dan would probably be the one. He's a fantastic player. He's a fantastic fella. He's absolutely hilarious. The man would have you in stitches laughing the whole time. But he's battling for a position there. He's maybe doesn't get quite as many starts as he wants, but comes off the bench last night and does absolutely brilliantly to score a goal. Fellas like that are going to be starting week in, week out, going to get a huge amount of game time. Fellas who haven't maybe got as much game time as they wanted up till now, going to get a huge amount of game time from here on. So that's the positive way of looking at it, rather than looking at, being tired or anything in that front. I think all our squad, we're going, we have a lot of really, really, really quality players here. So let's just embrace the fact that it's going to be carnage basically for the next 3 months and do as best as we possibly can,
Yeah, Filippo was talking after the game last night and talking about the prospect of facing Tottenham. Have a listen.
I would love to play against Jose Mourinho because I think he's an icon in soccer, right? So just to meet him on the pitch will be great.
Yeah, we were saying earlier that it used to be a case that we used to sort of want to play against the bigger teams, and now it seems like the coaches. Anyway, they were the thoughts of Filippo Giovagnoli after the game last night, the thoughts of Shane Keegan as well, of Dundalk backroom team, and we wish them all the very best over the next couple of months. It's going to be brilliant for us all to watch on. Some indications this morning that maybe some fans might be let in for some of these games a little later, and we shall see about all that as the time unfolds. It is 20 to 9 on this Friday morning, and you're watching OTB AM, which is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. We've lots to come. We're going to talk rugby with Jenny Murphy. In just a little while, we're going to talk Liverpool and the Premier League and beyond in the company of Phil Thompson. Phil Egan will be here a little bit later as well to give you your TV recommendations when it comes to football for the weekend too. So all that to come. But before all that, Daniel Kelly, mentioned there, name checked, a great character in that Dundalk dressing room by Shane Keegan just now. He got Dundalk's third goal last night, came off the bench to do so. He grew up in the shadow of the Aviva Stadium and even had an uncle on hand working as a steward last night.
Unbelievable in the backyard. It's dreaming about it last night. Hopefully, I didn't know whether I was going to be playing, so I knew I'd get me chance at some stage, and thankfully it took about half an hour to go in, but I went in. Yeah. Unbelievable feeling.
You must have been looking on thinking that was the type of game that might suit you, because it.
Yeah, I was looking at the left full after around 50-60 minutes, and he was blowing a bit, so I was looking at him and saying to myself, I could sort of, if I do get on, I could get down the wing and get at him straight away.
Over 6 minutes or 50 or
and I got at him straight away, and listen, it's a great ball from Sean Murray. I don't know whether, I think it was just onside, and thankfully it's gone in, but unbelievable since then.
Dan, I heard you talking the build-up, and you were hoping maybe your uncle might get in as a steward.
He let us in through the gate when we were coming in. I think he asked his boss there on Tuesday night to see if she could let him in, so thankfully he got in. But I seen him coming in, he gave us a nice wave when we were coming in on the bus.
Yeah, it was good to the moment that someone could have the family around again.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's my mum's brother, so he's worked here since the last 15-20 years. My dad used to work here as well, but he's a lovely fella, and he was buzzing after. I didn't get a chance to see him, but before the game he looked real happy and waving and stuff to all the lads, so it's just a great night all round.
So he's been working here trying to get your tail on, he's been waiting for you to score there.
Oh, Jesus. I don't know, it's got a long time anyway. I was dreaming out, as I said last night, so thankfully I've notched. I was only saying to Darren and Davey and Cammy this morning and last night to say that I haven't scored this season. I'm sort of due one, so thankfully it's no better time to get one than tonight.
Dan Cleary's outfit actually was security here tonight. He just got a one-off job, I think, tonight. So it's nice for them.
Yeah, it's Daniel Kelly in conversation with reporters after that game last night. Just coming up at 8:45 on this Friday morning. We turn our focus now to rugby, because Rugby Academy Ireland have announced a launch of their women's under-20s representative team, and unlike their male counterparts, female rugby players don't have the opportunity to participate at that grade, and so the idea here is to foster player development and provide high performance coaching. And one of those high performance coaches, I'm delighted to say, joins us on the line this morning, Jenny Murphy. Good morning to you, Jenny.
Good morning, how are you guys?
Skills coach. So what's the proposition here and what's the gig?
Well, essentially there's no we're the only Ireland are the only Six Nations side that doesn't have an under 20 women's team. There's a gap there, it needs to be filled, and Rugby Academy Ireland are like, right, let's go ahead, let's do it. There's a gulf there. There's a huge drop-off rate for players that are going from underage or under 18 up to senior level, and we want to kind of keep those players involved and stay in the game. So we're gonna give this a crack and see how we get on.
Yeah, why are the IRFU was the first thing that struck me when I read about it yesterday. Why the IRFU aren't filling this gap?
Oh, your guess is as good as mine. I'm not too sure. It's a pity. I think it's a great opportunity, but women's rugby in this country has been in this position before. The women's team weren't always under the branch of the IRFU. They were they were on their own for a while. So instead of just kind of waiting around and asking, just do it ourselves, and hopefully in the future we'll come on board and something will be done for young adults that want to kind of progress on through pathways, because there's no real clear pathways for a women's player in this country. If you're a boy and you go online and you look up your pathways, you can clearly see how to get from minis to an international jersey. You can see the clear pathways. And with girls, it's a little bit, there's gaps. There's gaps there, which is a pity because we've got some really talented players here. So we're hoping that this is something that can really keep girls in the game, have a bit of fun, learn something as well, and progress on to the next level.
Yeah, like it does suggest that the IRFU, and I appreciate that that's not your starting point on this, but the IRFU don't take any level of women's rugby serious if they're not committing to put the pathways in place to provide the talent to eventually get through to the senior side. Seems like a fairly clear indicator that they don't really take this thing that seriously.
Again, I guess you want to be able to, you want any kid, whether it be male or female, when they're picking up a rugby ball for the first time and they fall in love with the game, to see a very clear way of oh, this is how I could be the next Catherine Dane or the next Johnny Sexton. There should be a limited amount of obstacles for that player to get to where they want to go. And obviously you've got a lot of hard work and talent and to get to that level, but the structure should be there in order for you to be able to do that. It's not and this isn't the IRFU, I guess, need to kind of pull up their socks a little bit, but this is across the board. This isn't just for underage. I think they can do better with the women's game, both national and at grassroots. Yeah, I think, did I read somewhere there was 3,000 youth players? That's the playing pot that you'll be looking to try and tap into. Yeah, and again, the numbers they could be a little bit above that or a little bit below, but they'd be around. There's a lot of girls that have played provincial under 18s that are now making the move to senior level, whether it's with AIL or trying to get onto the senior provincial side, which hasn't gone on this year because of COVID. But they're I guess there's just so much talent in this country there, and it would be such a shame if they were just kind of let go, or if you come up especially when you're that age, if you start playing senior rugby, a lot of the girls that you're playing with, they're late 30s, sometimes 40s even, and the physicality is so different, and that in itself can be extremely off-putting. It can be sometimes if you're not even physically strong enough to cope with that kind of pressure, and mentally it's stressful. Confidence can take a hit, and hopefully with what we're trying to do, it can basically just keep them in the game and get them playing, bumping up their skills even more, and then hopefully get a provincial jersey or an Irish jersey. But fingers crossed, that's the plan anyway.
Yeah, and I presume looking at other sports as well, Jenny, because it's seen there's umpteen players that have played for that the national team who've come from other sports, and GAA particularly. I presume when we look at the skills specifically aspect of it, I presume that's the most like for like.
Yeah, there's a lot of girls that transfer there. Some actually really successful transfers are coming from hockey, but more so from Gaelic. I think all the girls in the squad in 2013-14, more than 75% of them had played Gaelic at some stage. So there is huge transferable skills there. And for the moment this year, we're just looking at girls that have experience of playing rugby. We're not going to be chucking them in at the deep end and coaching them from scratch and giving them contact skills straight away. We'd like them to have some taste of being on a rugby pitch, but further down the line, yeah, there's a huge talent pool for rugby players and for players in this country. It's just maybe hopefully we can take some of the Gaelic footballers and hand them an egg-shaped ball and see what happens.
Yeah. Well, look, it'll be interesting to watch. And I presume getting them game time, or can you replicate much of that on the training pitch, or in terms of, I think it's the target is to play England at some point towards the end of the season. So how much of that can you replicate in advance?
We can have in-house matches, training. Obviously it's not ideal with COVID, so we're working around that. But the main thing is to get it up and running and see a certain performance from the girls that are involved. And as well as that, we want them to be playing with teams across the country. Like there's teams down across provinces that have great coaches, really good players, and we want them to go back and play with them as well. So this isn't about keeping the players for ourselves. We want these women to be playing as much as possible, because when you're playing matches, it's like touching on your point, it's so much more valuable than constantly training in camp. Sometimes you just need that match fitness or that little hit. So we don't want to just be coaching them. We want to encourage them to go back to those senior teams and maybe bring some of the skills that we've hopefully taught them and pass it on. So it's spreading a little bit as well.
Jenny, on a practical level, when you talk about the lack of a pathway for women trying to play rugby, how much of an issue does that become when you talk about specialist positions in the game, where you need to have it down at a certain age? If you're transferring from one sport and coming to rugby late, is there a chance that Irish players have been at a disadvantage, in the 2, 3, 9 and 10 jerseys?
Yeah, those are they're really technical parts of the game, and even if you're coming from playing rugby before, it's just such a shift. A lot of the time you'll see in maybe lower divisions in the women's game that it's very scripted rugby, and it's they play first phase and then they think about the first phase and play it again, and we want smart rugby players that aren't going to be. We don't want to tell them what we want them to play. We want them to look up and assess themselves, and you need to be playing as much as possible in order for something like that to click. Even playing, and I put my hand up and be like, this isn't my area of expertise, but when you talk about front rows and particularly the tight head position, like that takes years, and then finally something clicks and you're like, I get it. You can be extremely strong, you can be extremely physical, but like it's such a difficult position to play in. And then when you're going up against, when we're asking some of these players that have gone through to go up against, 35-year-olds that are like excel in this position and have been here for a while and have maybe 2 or 3 stone on your opposite number, that's a huge ask. And it can be extremely daunting as well. So more game time. We want women to be playing as much matches as possible at a high level, because when we do ask them to play, those international games, it's instead of the jump being by 30-40%, we bridge that gap that little bit.
How much of an opportunity is there as well in terms of putting a real identity on this team? Because I don't. Senior level, we probably struggle with the identity. Like, what is the identity of Irish rugby? And like the obvious comparison is something like the All Blacks, when it's very clear and identified that at underage level, the All Blacks have a certain way of playing. Considering this is a new team, this is a new opportunity to blood new players through the system, is there a chance for you to say, right, we're going to play in the right way, and that system and that style of play is going to be something that maintains for the next couple of years, hopefully?
I think coaches to a certain extent can have some say in the culture, but again, it's what players we have and what we're working with, and we'll work within that. But ideally, with Fiona Hayes and Ali Miller, who I'll be working with on the coaching setup, we want the women to enjoy and play the game. It's a game at the end of the day. I know we have ambitions for them to play at representative level, but like that doesn't mean that you don't have to play a big serious Six Nations game without a smile on your face. It's a pretty damn good place to be. So we want them to have a bit of crack, but also we want them to kind of back themselves a little bit. Sometimes the women's game can be a little bit conservative and we play it safe. So we want them to be able to identify where the space is and have a go and really kind of get themselves out of their comfort zone and, play. You watch, like you've seen the Racing get that win at the end and like a Finn Russell balls of steel pass across the defensive line. Now, we're not going to be asking the girls we're not expecting that just yet, but to have the confidence to do something like that, I think that's what I'd love to I'd love the team that we're building to be able to do, just to have the confidence in their own ability and have a bit of fun while they're doing it.
Yeah, maybe hold off on showing that video on day one, like maybe a few days into
Yeah, we won't set the bar just that high at the moment.
Can I ask you as well, Johnny, just as we wrap, I was listening to Fiona Steed on a podcast this week talking about the possibility of the game going professional and the difficulties that are surrounding that, like obviously the commercial market, the structures of domestic leagues, the structures of European leagues, getting crowds into games and all that kind of thing. She felt that it wasn't possible, that she didn't feel that she would see it. What's your thoughts? Is it possible, and like almost is it a must that it happens for the development of the game?
It's disappointing to say, but I don't think the women's game is going to go professional anytime soon in this country, which will just drive on teams even further. Like we're seeing, I know we only got to see 3 games in the Six Nations for the women's this year, but the performances between professional and amateur teams, they're going to get bigger, and you're going to have in 2 or 3 years' time, if it stays the way it is, and Ireland stay amateur, and England are professional, and France are professional, and likes of New Zealand and stuff who are on contracts, that gap is going to grow, and those tries are going to ramp up, and it's going to be like Ireland, England, like 15 years ago. Strike now. Like at the moment, we're still competitive and still able to put a fight on. But if the longer you wait, the more catch up that we will have to do, and that's a difficult position to be in. Like being a professional rugby player, it's an unbelievable thing. I got a taste of it at Sevens, and your job is just to play rugby well. You don't have to worry about getting to work on time and trying to get a nap at lunchtime. And then maybe get to training extra early so you can have another sleep. It's all those kind of stresses move away. And the Irish team, they deserve that. You've got girls that have moved over to the UK to play rugby at a higher level and to play. Now, we say professional, but they're sacrificing their career. They're not paid a huge amount of money, but they're doing it because they want to get better and become better rugby players themselves. So when they do come back and play in that green jersey, they're bringing something extra on the pitch. Give them an opportunity to do that here. We've got provincial setups. Why not use that? Maybe we're not going to be professional, and as in you're not going to get all Belvedere players or Railway Union players paid, but we have setups already there in Leinster, Munster, Ulster and Connacht. Can we use that a bit? Again, I'm not like Yoda when it comes to stuff like this. So there's probably smarter people to ask, but I do think they deserve better. Would the men have to put up with this? Probably not. So I think it's time to raise our voices a little bit and get a bit mad. Yeah. That's good. A good thing to do, because none of us need to be Yoda, but certainly having the conversations about it is a good place to start. October 29th, Jenny, the trial day, players between 17 and 19 get involved. I presume Googling Rugby Academy Ireland will do the job. Yeah. Bring your gum shields, have a crack, and like my big ask is whether don't be discouraged by not sticking your name forward. So even if you've had a setback or disappointment and, you didn't get selected for, under 18s or for trials at Leinster, players don't get missed all the time. Like case in point, Ali Miller, she didn't get selected by Leinster. She's one of the most successful Irish rugby players in the world. Those coaches make a mistake. People make mistakes all the time. So don't be afraid to put your name down just because you've had a setback before. It's another opportunity to run out, play against some hopefully other good rugby players, and it should be a bit of fun as well. So get involved. Great stuff. Speak soon. Thanks a million, Jenny. Thanks a million. Thanks a lot. Jenny Murphy on the line there, the new skills coach with Rugby Academy Ireland, and it is now time for the papers.
OTB AM.
Yeah, 9 o'clock on this Friday morning. It's OTB AM, and as you might expect across the back pages today, it's Dundalk all the way, and on otbsports.com as well, reflections on that game last night, as well as the men's splash story there that you can see. New York GAA escape ban after large crowd gathers at Gaelic Park. It's a story by one Owen Sheehan, and we're going to put some meat in the bones of that story very shortly in the company of Owen, and lots more up there as well. Reaction from the Aviva last night and from the Champions League draw, and plenty more as well, besides John Giles too from the show last night. But on the back pages today, the Irish Independent, first up, Giovagnoli hopes for Jose, and fans may get to see it. The thoughts of Aidan Fitzmaurice at the Aviva last night. Dundalk guaranteed €2.9 million after booking their Europa League spot. Cullen insists Pro 14 not to blame for Saracens' loss. The other story there in the Indo this morning. The Irish Daily Mirror for you. Bring on big guns. Brilliant Lilies grab a €3 million windfall, and Giovagnoli wants Jose. Liverpool hopes crash and burnt Leno. And Dermot even shone at clay pigeon shooting. He was the most talented player I ever had in a dressing room. Pillar Caffrey exclusive inside the Mirror. We're going to bring you more details on that in just a few moments' time. In the Sun, Murray minted, tab of the morning I think right there, and Boss spurred on that game last night. Ole's got a group of death and caned. Harry Kane hat-trick last night. Tottenham 7, Maccabi Haifa 2. The result in that one. The Racing Post, Murphy vows to clear name after positive cocaine test. This is the story from David Carr. Oisin Murphy vowing to fight to clear his name after the shock news that he tested positive for the drug while riding in France in the summer. And it's worth pointing out that Oisin Murphy, the details are a urine sample given by the classic winning rider at Shanty on the 19th of July was found to contain metabolites of the drug, but subsequent hair tests have found no trace of the substance, and Murphy himself saying that in a statement, I've never taken cocaine in my life and I'll fight to clear my name. That's the Racing Post for you this morning. The Irish Daily Star, some good photographs last night. That's John Mountney after the game last night that you can see there. Fill your boots. Lily's bag €3 million group phase jackpot there. Leno makes Clapside pay the penalty. That's the Carabao Cup last night. And Murphy vows to clear his name. That's the Star. In the Irish Daily Mail this morning, Dundalk are in dreamland. South Africans will lift standards, says Leo Cullen in his thoughts about the incoming clubs from South Africa into the Pro 14/16. Top Irish jockey denies drug use after failed test, writes Philip Quinn here. I am innocent. That quote that we brought you from Oisin Murphy there a minute ago. The Herald dubs to handle Dermot loss. Ger Brennan backs the Dublin team to push on for that 6 in a row, and Dundalk in the money. The Irish Examiner this morning, for once fortune shines on an Irish side on the European stage, writes David Sneyd there. Dundalk unlock key to Europa League riches. It's really all dominated by Dundalk, as you would imagine, and as is right on this Friday morning for the morning that's in it. The Irish Times has another picture from post-game last night with Dundalk in full celebratory mode there on the Aviva pitch. Dundalk get their performance right to reach the big stage again, writes Emmett Malone there. We made history, but now we'll work, says Filippo Giovagnoli. And then some of the UK pages, the Times London edition, tough talking Southgate lays down the law. It's all dominated by Southgate versus Jose really there. And hand gel used on cricket ball is another story of ball tampering. This time with, you got to adapt to whatever's in your pocket, it turns out, when you're playing cricket. It works both ways. Jose, Southgate swipes back at Mourinho over Kane fitness, both of them saying the other one should rest him, obviously, is the key to all of that. That is the Guardian for you this morning, and the last one we'll go to is the Telegraph. Players must respect the shirt, says Southgate. This is the dropping of Foden and Greenwood for their upcoming games, and more inside there as well. They are the back pages and the headlines of what's happening on otbsports.com this morning, including on that story about a lot of fans, and people get a good sense. I recommend you head along to otbsports.com now to get a sense of exactly what it is this story is about, but a lot of fans flouting guidelines.
Yeah, at Gaelic Park in New York for the past few months, really, there have been fans at games in New York. There, of course, are fans at games here in Ireland as well. There have been a few sightings of perhaps more fans than we should have in stadiums here. But the fact of the matter is, in Ireland right now, you can have a certain amount of fans. In New York, you can't have fans. You're not allowed to have any spectators at matches in Yankee Stadium. The playoffs are underway. A couple of days ago, they played in front of an empty stadium to finish off their regular season. But a 9-minute drive north, and you get to Gaelic Park, which was wedged with people on Sunday afternoon, as they had their football final replayed, they had their hurling final, and they had their junior football final as well. So they had a triple header. A lot of people in the ground, and it's not the first time, as I said, that we've seen that. Let's have a look at some of the footage from the weekend then, because this will give you a good sense of the madness really at the ground. Like, it's something that is almost reminiscent of the pre-COVID era. So there was worries about what might actually happen next. Now, a couple of locals around the Bronx area posted photos of this, like tagging the 311 number, which is the number in New York for less offensive crimes and all that sort of thing. But NYPD have been on to us to say that there hasn't been any official complaints. So the locals are unhappy, but they're not that unhappy to actually complain about the police. But Manhattan College were said to be very displeased with this, because Manhattan College essentially leased the venue out to New York GAA, but Manhattan College also have to answer to the Metropolitan Transportation Authority themselves, so they don't have full ownership. So it had been thought a couple of days ago that the GAA in New York would be under severe threat of actually losing their access to Gaelic Park. That has now not happened, and it came out last night in conversations with Manhattan College that they have addressed the appropriate health and safety measures at Gaelic Park, and that New York GAA has committed to having no spectators at games at Gaelic Park going forward. Now, obviously, I got in touch with New York GAA, and their statement last night was very interesting. They said, with an abundance of caution, and despite meeting all New York City and New York State guidelines through this shortened season, the New York GAA has decided, in conjunction with Manhattan College, that the last 4 games of the season will be played behind closed doors without spectators. So they are saying that they met New York City and New York State guidelines. So I've gone back for a second comment, and hopefully we'll have an updated piece again this afternoon to see how they managed to meet those guidelines, despite the fact that you can see plainly there that Gaelic Park was packed with people. They've got off lightly here. They haven't been kicked out of Gaelic Park. So it's not a complete disaster in the end, but how this was allowed to happen, where they were in a position where the GAA was almost booted off their venue in the Bronx, definitely raises serious questions. And they had raised questions about this themselves. Like, we've seen emails over the past couple of days as well. As far back as August 18th, an official, a high-ranking official in New York GAA, had emailed club officials to say that Manhattan College have concerns about gatherings of people at the grounds, and they suggested that in order for safety for the season to proceed, all guidelines must be followed to the letter. They mentioned that one complaint to the city or state could see everything shut down for the year. So they were acutely aware of complaints being made about their current activity that could have brought this whole thing down, and that was August 18th. And then last week, before the replay, before the hurling final, another email that we've seen says that we are expecting our biggest crowd of the year, and they encourage people to exercise caution and to wear masks. There is no situation where you're wearing masks or exercising caution in New York at the moment. You're simply not allowed to have people at the stadium. So there is.
Who was that email from, Owen? That email from New York GAA?
From New York GAA.
Saying that they were expecting their biggest crowd of the season in an environment where no attendances were permitted.
Correct. It does seem, from everything I've seen, that there was no awareness whatsoever that crowds weren't allowed. It almost seems like Gaelic Park was this little independent republic in the middle of the Bronx over the last couple of months, where they were abiding by Irish guidelines where you could have spectators at grounds. Like, just to hammer this home again, the Yankees are down the road. They haven't had a spectator watching them bat a ball. They are the same jurisdiction, obviously. You can't just suddenly be like, oh, well, they're doing it in Ireland and we're Irish here. Like, so to say that it's raised eyebrows in the locality is putting it lightly, where they're like, why is there such a congregation of people at Gaelic Park? But hopefully this is the end of it, that, they will follow the guidelines. And as I say, fortunate that Manhattan College didn't take this to the next level, so they will be able to see out their season, as I say, another 4 games to get played off.
Absolutely incredible. And whatever about the official response and actions around it, as individuals, when people filed into the stadium and looked around and suddenly saw hundreds of other people sitting around, and none of them, of the people who remained decided that this is not an environment to be in, that they all hung around, is phenomenal. More detailing on that, and if any more comes in, we'll keep you updated as well. Keep an eye on otbsports.com for that. One other story that we're going to touch on is a piece in the Irish Daily Mirror this morning. It's Pillar Caffrey, who's a voice we probably don't hear enough from in so many ways. And he's reflecting on the retirement to Darren Connolly that caught everybody by surprise this week, and what a talent that he was. And Connolly was brought into the squad initially by Peter Caffrey and his management team at that time, and he had mentioned how he had got wind of this great talent, and how Dave Billings, who was one of his selectors at the time, and two guys that were always very closely aligned, the late Dave Billings now, of course, and Davey had mentioned, he says, that a lad at St Vincent, a talented dual player, and we went to see him one Saturday after Dublin training. As it happened, Dermot Connolly wasn't picked to start the game, but once I saw him in the half-time kick around, I turned to Davey and said, I'm not even staying for the second half, bring him in on Tuesday night. What a recommendation that is. I don't know if he had something better to be getting to, but how phenomenal is that? You're looking at, he talks about the technical prowess of Connolly, which is not something actually people tend to talk a lot about. It's all about this natural flair, but technically, what a player to be able to pick out a pass. But he saw him in the half-time shakedown and said, get him in. Love it.
Yeah, he was done. He was like Joe Brody and Pat Spillane, absolutely blown away by Dermot Connolly just at the sight of him. It's interesting, you think about, like you just read that Pillar Caffrey piece, and he talks about like how he turned his hand to clay pigeon shooting and was absolutely amazing at it, and how he was a brilliant hurler, obviously. Then you think to yourself, was he a brilliant hurler, or could he still potentially be a great hurler? Like, this is a conversation, a kite that has been flown in the past, that the Dublin hurlers could do with somebody like Dermot Connolly, that Pat Gilroy, when he was Dublin manager for the hurlers, that is, he's obviously got a great relationship with Dermot Connolly. Could he possibly have brought him back? Because that was during the year out when Pat Gilroy was managing the Dublin hurlers and Connolly wasn't playing any football. I wonder if that talk is going to intensify over the next little while. Of course, he's going to take this winter off, and maybe he'll take next year off, but how old is too old to play for the Dublin hurlers? It's obviously an incredibly physical game. Is it as physical as playing top-level intercounty football? Maybe not. It's more based on skill, obviously. That I just wonder, if he plays enough small ball for the club, could there be a way into the intercounty setup for him? And I'm sure with the way things ended for Pat Gilroy with Dublin hurling, it definitely seemed that there was like work commitments, and he's obviously got he's a very successful career man, and he needed to focus on his job. That says to me that there is an opportunity down the line for him. Maybe if things quieten down in his career, for him to go back in as Dublin hurling manager, and for him to potentially bring the ace out of the pack, which would be Dermot Connolly. Now, of course, Matty Kenny's done. They obviously had a disappointing defeat last year, and he'll be looking to turn that around this year and try and get onto the heights that they believe they should be at. But I just wonder if this thing is done for Dermot Connolly in a Dublin jersey, because if there's one other code he's pretty damn good at. Yeah. Well, Conal Keaney is still at it on, and he's 52, I think, at last check, so there's plenty of time for him to really get involved. Right, that's it on the papers for you this morning. It is 12 minutes past 9 on this Friday morning. We're going to talk Liverpool, Premier League, and plenty more besides with Phil Thompson next.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio. Off the ball.
Now Dundalk are in here on the break. The ball is going to break across to Dundalk. This is a chance to make it 3. And Dundalk have gone 3-1 up, Nathan. All right. Fantastic moment for Daniel Kelly. Every time we come over, we get a goal. Set it up perfectly. Keep coming back to me.
Off the ball. Weeknights from 7 and weekends from 1.
This is OTB Sports Radio. Live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
Brady and Belichick have been at the forefront of the credit in New England for the last 20 years.
OTB's American Football Show. The Snap on OTB Sports Radio.
Burrow very much thrown in the deep end. He seems to have the correct temperament. I've never been totally won over by his actual talent, to be honest.
Keep updated with American football on OTB. Tune into The Snap every Friday on OTB Sports Radio.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
All right, nearly 9:15 on Friday morning. Delighted to have you along with us with you until 10 this morning. Phil Thompson, good morning to you.
Adrian, how are you, mate?
Flying it, thanks. The League Cup last night, penalties, Liverpool go out. Better off out of it?
It's never better off out of it. But the League Cup is probably the least of the priorities for not just Liverpool, but for any fan. But you always like to think, while we're in this mode, the way we are playing is that you would like to stay in every competition. It does bring its own burdens, as we've seen with Manchester City over the last couple of years. We're going to win the quadruple, and then, if we got one cup, we're going to win the treble, and it creates its own problems. But the League Cup's always been very good, certainly to me, back in my day, and I've quite enjoyed it. But I don't think Jurgen Klopp will be shedding too many tears. It was a game that we should have won. I don't know whether you've seen it or not, but Bernd Leno had a worldie and in goal, and you just get games like that. I've been wondering when we're going to get one of those in the Premier League, and it will be knocking at the door, and the keeper will make saves. So maybe we just got it out of the way.
Yeah, we were. There was a bit of Irish European interest last night, Phil. So most of us just saw the penalty shootout, and that's all you needed to come for. Talk to us about Liverpool generally. I know when we've chatted to you before, we've talked about Liverpool style. It's tweaked a little bit over the last couple of years, but by and large, teams know what they're getting. So a few games in, tough start against Leeds. How impressed have you been with this Liverpool team this season, and have you seen anything new about them?
I think when we were on a couple of weeks ago, we had a chat. Probably come to that, and I'll see how they are reacting. And it's mainly with the high line that they play. But it's been nothing short of sensational. Played very well. I know Chelsea went down to 10 men in the second half, but Liverpool were by far the best team in the first half. We were absolutely brilliant. We've got better. The Leeds game, yes, a little bit sloppy at times. You know, Mr. Key likes to use that word. But I think since then, the Arsenal game was one of the best first halves. I think Gary Neville mentioned that. One of the best first halves he's ever seen. And for us sort of to go behind was a shock to everybody. I think it was the first time they got, never mind in our box and our half. But some of the football has been quite exhilarating. It really has. And you're looking and you're thinking, wow, can we keep this going? Particularly people were impressed after the Manchester City debacle against Leicester. But that's only a small blip for Manchester City, I'm sure to get. But Liverpool's form has been truly magnificent.
You've brought up Roy Keane, Phil. We're always reluctant to bring him up, but you brought him up now, so we better ask you a follow-up question on that. What did you make of the whole thing? Like, I mean, on one side of it, obviously, maybe you're just thoroughly encouraged by the fact that Klopp is sort of willing to so publicly and vociferously defend his team against, the might of Roy Keane.
Do you know what? It was great, Nick. It got a lot of back pages here, probably over there. It did do. And it's nice. We always love it. I think Tino's fantastic value on the television. One thing that I wouldn't agree with when he said about Eric Dyer, that was a nailed-on penalty when he had his back to the ball with Andy Carr. I thought, what was that? Are you sure you actually watched that incident? But I just think it got taken out of context. I think when Jurgen Klopp came to do his interview, and he's put his earpiece in, the first thing he's heard is Roy saying that he was a bit sloppy. And when I was watching it, I think we could all understand it was just that when Andy Robertson makes his rick, you go, that was a bit sloppy. And I think it was just then that Jurgen came in. And I think you could see Tino was a bit embarrassed. I think Jurgen had a little bit of a laugh later on because he said, I'll have to listen to it back to make sure. And it was. I think life is about timing. The timing was totally wrong there when Jurgen came into it. But Kino was full value. I love listening to him.
It probably speaks to a way that Jurgen Klopp plays and the way football has gone at the moment as well, Phil, that it is impossible to play football flawlessly when you're pressing at such high speed, attacking with incredible pace. Roy Keane, in his day, obviously football was played at a slower speed, and there was an easier ability to, I guess, achieve perfection within games. The way Liverpool play, there are going to be moments where they look a little bit ropey, but that's what comes from achieving such incredible things and trying to, I guess, cause that beautiful chaos that comes out on the pitch.
Yeah, well, let's go to that bit, what I'm saying, and if it is the sloppy bit, what Roy is saying, what happened when they had the counter-attack. People say Liverpool play this high line. It is the way and how the team functions best is you play the high line. Why I know about it is, back when we were playing, we had exactly the same problem. Not the same problem, because it worked. Goalkeeper Ray Clements, sweeper keeper. We pushed very high up. That was better for the team. People talked about Ian Rush as being the front line who started the defending. He wouldn't do that unless we were nice and tight, pushed up, the midfield pushed up. It helps. And I think this Liverpool team functions better with the high line. Yes, there's a risk to it, but sometimes that risk is worth taking. And I know because of, back in the day, how many goals we actually lost because of it was extremely minimal. So that cost, the risk, I think works very much in your favour. So long may it continue, because it is the best way for Liverpool to play. And you do, as long, and we had this conversation a couple of weeks ago, as long enough, and I see the players reacting better. Once that ball gets kicked, you don't watch and you're not waiting for the flag. You react. You react. Once the ball's gone, then you follow it. And then, obviously, you're hoping that the linesman flag will go up, which sometimes it's not of late. But I think that is the best way for Liverpool to function if they carry on doing it.
What's in terms of the overall season, Phil? You were very early in, obviously, at this stage, and I'm sure. Let me ask you about Man United, because I'm sure you're not losing very much sleep at nights about United's troubles at the minute. But they have Spurs on Sunday. It's a game that's live on OTB, so we do want to sort of get your brain thinking about that one. They've been patchy, obviously. Fortunate against Brighton, couple of decent signings. Do they even look like a top 4 team at the minute for you, or no?
They are a top four team. Do they look at it at the moment? Probably not. And I think there's a lot of teams like this. I think they're probably away from home. As you've seen last week, and think about it, right, there was only Liverpool who won of all the home teams last weekend, which is quite phenomenal in Premier League football. That's the way it is, away from home. There's no advantage now. So I think Manchester United, because of the dysfunctional way this season got going, no pre-season, proper pre-season, I don't think a lot of teams have really settled down yet. You've seen what happened with Manchester City. Manchester United are no different. After the good finish last year, I think they're struggling to get things right again. And it's like anything. Everybody then starts pointing the finger at the manager. Is he good enough? Is he not good enough? They have to believe in him, and they have to give him a chance to get Manchester United back playing that sort of football and pushing for the Premier League title, because that's what we all know about Manchester United. But you're quite right. I'm not losing any sleep.
You might lose sleep if things turn around for them at some point soon. Look at it doesn't look all that likely at the minute, but we'll see how that plays out over the next while. So just in terms of Liverpool then, Phil, I mentioned we're not long into the season, very difficult to know at this stage, but there are good signs there. I mean, last night notwithstanding, and to be fair, it was obviously, with a couple of exceptions, by and large, a very young team that took to the pitch last night. Is your expectation on the body of evidence that you've seen so far that I know you think Liverpool are going to go and win the league, and I think, to be fair, most people do, but again, that the gap is only extending rather than compressing now?
Well, we could all see, we all thought that it was going to be a lot closer. We've seen everybody trying to improve their squads. I think teams will get better. We played Chelsea at a very good time. I think Chelsea will be strong. But I think you looked at it and you went, all the changes that they've made could work in our favour, Liverpool's favour, and it certainly did do. All the big boys will be there. Everton's been an interesting start for them. You know, they're looking quite strong, and we know if Everton, the players and the club, get confidence, they can really want to make an impact. They've been quite an interesting thing for me. Hopefully them, like Manchester United, don't continue on Everton's upward surge anyway. But I was quite... They made a big statement with the League Cup the other night with the team that he actually played, Ancelotti. To me, Everton would always go, oh, well, we'll put the kids out if we go out. It's important we maintain our Premier League status. I think Ancelotti's gone, but somebody tapped him and went, you win a trophy with this side, you will have legendary status.
Phil, there's one other thing I wanted to get your take on. We had Kenny Cunningham on the show last Monday week. I'm sure you saw the comments. They kind of went wild online, actually. He was talking about Thiago Alcantara being weak defensively. But I just wanted to give you like the full breakdown of quotes here. No, I appreciate
Sorry, I'm just laughing. Go on. Sorry.
So just the full quotes in context, their squad is strengthened by Thiago's arrival for me, but they've spent £30 million on a third choice, number 6. I think he's inferior to Fabinho and Jordan Henderson in that role. That's why I'm surprised they brought him in. And, you know, the weak defensively thing is mentioned for sure, and he mentions a number of missed tackles in the game against Chelsea. But that has to come into the fact that, is there a reasonable argument that as a number 6, specifically as a number 6, is there a chance that Fabinho and Jordan Henderson may actually be picked ahead of Thiago?
No. Kenny's he's looking at this all wrong. Not you're talking about two players there who are different. Jordan Henderson's all about energy and he makes things happen. Fabinho he's very good in the air. He does what he does. Thiago, as a number 6, does what he does. He does what he does because he's won trophies, leagues at Barcelona. He's won Champions League at Bayern Munich by playing the way that he plays. That is his role. That is the way he plays. If Kenny's wanting to say, oh, maybe he's not a tackler and you don't see him doing this, and he's not third choice, I'm sorry, but if there was an improvement to be made, it was somebody who could play in that role in there and move the ball forward a lot quicker. And the players that he's talked about there, Henderson and Fabinho, yes, they are very good at what they do, but they don't pass the ball forward like Thiago can do. And I think it has been one of those things which was, I think, there's not too many who could be a grade upwards for Liverpool. Thiago's done that. And I'll tell you something else. Diogo Jota was another clever signing. He was very good. He was a Mane signing that you went, yeah, I've seen him there. And I know I'd listened to people and they were going, Jota, you know, they've paid 40 million. This boy is a very talented player. I did his games last season for Wolves and he was nothing short. And I was saying at the time, he could easily be playing for one of the big 4 teams.
Yeah, he's quality. Just to go back to the number 6s then, Phil. So Thiago's not third choice. So who are you dropping, Fabinho or Henderson?
No, he will play. I would think you could play with both of those players in the side. To me, there's still a thing. I love Wijnaldum, but to me, there's still a problem there with Wijnaldum. I think, to me, he's trying to lead for nothing at the end of the season, which is a worry for me. Because I don't think any teams can let players of his quality just leave for nothing. So that is a worry. And we'll have to see how that pans out. But I can see the 3 of those playing in there. But for me, Thiago plays all the time.
So he's instead of Wijnaldum then?
For me, he's if you want, instead of Wijnaldum, yeah. Right. I play Fabinho, Thiago and Henderson when all fit.
Kenny might have been onto something, Phil, is what you're saying.
Pardon?
Kenny might have been onto something. Because he was saying Kenny's point was about his defensive frailties is overstating it, but playing him a bit further up the pitch.
There's no defensive frailties in him, I'm afraid. You know, it gives him choices. He's just not like Fabinho. He's not like Henderson. He plays it. He's not a slide tackler. He's not one of these tough men like a Graham Souness in centre midfield. He does what he does better than most in European football. That's what you've got to look at. Not everybody's Fabinho, not everybody's Henderson. He's better than both of them. and that's why it's an upgrade on what we've done in the signing of him. So I think Kenny's got it totally wrong.
Okay, well, that's pretty clear. One last one just before, and I'm about to get shot by the producer, but one last one before we let you go, Phil. Rian Brewster, it seems, is going. It's been rumoured for a while, but it looks as though he's off to Sheffield United now with a 3-year, Liverpool holding a 3-year buy-back clause. Is this good business? It's 23.5 million quid, we're told, to Sheffield United. Good business, or would you rather have seen them hang around?
Is this Rian Brewster?
Yes.
I'll be sorry to see him go, I must admit. What Brewster has got, it's not just got an instinct for goals. He's a tough cookie as well. It looks as though he's hungry for it, which is a lot of players who don't. Young players come through, certainly strikers don't possess. You know, they have this nice bit of talent where they want to play. But I will be sorry to see him go. But I think we're trying to be clever with it and put a buyback clause in the contract, which gives us a little bit of a fallback on him. But I would rather keep him and let Origi go. That is the way I feel.
All right. Phil Thompson, thanks a million.
My pleasure. Cheers, guys. Take care.
Enjoy the football over the weekend. Phil Thompson there on the line. And as I mentioned, we do have that game live on Sunday as well. Plenty of good live football to get stuck into. But that Spurs United game live on Off the Ball on your radio on Sunday. Right, we've plenty more still to come. Phil Egan is on the way very shortly. A reminder too that you're watching OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good mornings start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. It is 9:30 on this Friday morning, and OTB Sports, in partnership with Cadbury FC, have kicked off a brand new series over the last number of weeks. In-depth chats with some of the biggest names in football. You'll have seen some of them already. And the third episode is going to see Gary Neville and Teddy Sheringham sit down for an in-depth chat in the company of Off the Ball's Joe Malloy. And it'll be brought to you on OTB's social channels and OTB Sports Radio. All on the app, by the way. If you don't have it, get it. Search OTB Sports in your app store, and it'll all be live and across those channels from Monday the 5th of October, so from this coming Monday. And you can check out cadburyfc.com for updates on promotions and giveaways. Right, as I said, 9:31, here's a video essay for you. It's Owen Sheehan's deep dive on why everyone hates Manchester United.
Hello there, just another friendly reminder that absolutely no one likes your football club. Let's start with some facts here. In a 2011 poll, Manchester United were officially crowned the most hated company in Britain. They pipped Ryanair to top spot, which means that people actually prefer being stuffed via fetal position into a plane with Dave from Bolton and his friends on their way to a stag in Krakow than Manchester United. Part of the many reasons for this is that no one likes Manchester United's owners. When John McClurrick came to take over in 2005, we knew things would probably have their rocky moments. But in actual fact, little did we know how much joy moments like this would bring to our lives.
I'm so sorry about that language. It's totally unacceptable, and I'm sorry about that.
Now, Manchester United fans say no one likes them because their fan base is so gigantic. Take this survey last year, for example, which claimed that 1.1 billion people support Manchester United. Let that sink in for a moment. I know a lot of people are fans of Manchester United, but that is 1 in every 7 human beings on planet Earth. If you are to believe this survey, then there are probably kids in the uncontacted Amazonian tribes currently running around in the new United away jersey. Now, some Manchester United fans claim that no one likes their football team because everybody's basically just jealous of their success. And who could argue with that? Take October 2014, when Manchester United manager Louis van Gaal thumped Jose Mourinho in a hashtag Google Trend battle for the ages. Who could forget when Jesse Lingard beat YouTuber Cal Freezy in a blindfolded penalty shootout last year? And what about their most recent success? Odion Ighalo, trending #1 when he signed up to play in the Theatre of Dreams. But despite all that, you just can't make Manchester United fans happy. Now, if we take a look at Twitter in recent weeks, you might have seen that Edwin van der Sar letter to Manchester United to tell them to take care of Donny van de Beek. Mike Phelan then responded with as boring a response as you can possibly conjure, a thumbs up. But yet, Mike Phelan's mentions, "Sign Sancho, big man," said this tweeter. "Sancho, Mike, Sancho. Where the Sancho, bro? Sign Sancho now. Hello, Mike. Can you please let Ed Woodward know that he is a useless piece of shit and muppet for the Leach's Glazers? And can you please make them sign more quality players? You can pass them through the Mickey Phelan test too. Hashtag Glazers out. And at Mason_season said, buy Sancho, Reguilon and Upamecano. Sell Smalling, Jones, Rocco, Pereira and Lingard. It really is that simple. Breaking news this morning, Ed Woodward has handed in his badge. Mason_season has taken over as Executive Vice Chairperson of Manchester United Football Club. You know what else everybody hates about Manchester United? Their constant battle to save human civilization. Remember when X-Men called up Manchester United to prevent the apocalypse?
We're looking for a particular group of mutants to help us defeat Apocalypse. We need a mutant with incredible reflexes.
How about David De Gea?
Thank you, Hank. I was thinking more like Nightcrawler.
You see, Manchester United fans, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, too much of a chicken to drop David De Gea. James McAvoy, not a bother on him.
Finally, we need someone with intensity and incredible focus.
Wait, I've got it. Cyclops.
Actually, Hank, I'm thinking of a different mutant. Hello, old friend.
Hello, Charles. Wayne Rooney?
That's right, Wayne Rooney in a full kit and a pair of runners is the only way that human civilization can be saved. Now, if you thought that existential threat was bad, well, I have some terrible news. Aliens are about to invade, and in Independence Day resurgence, I'm afraid to tell you that they have turned to all of our saviours. That's right, the Manchester United team of 2016.
This is a day of history in the making as Legacy Squadron is about to take to the skies.
You guys are footballers. What makes you think you could take on an alien army?
We won 20 league titles and 12 FA Cups.
4 League Cups and 20 Community Shields.
Quite how NASA overlooked the fact that Chris Smalling and Daley Blind couldn't stop West Ham from scoring 3 goals, let alone stop aliens from invading Earth, is never made clear in this instance.
You can't hold them back forever.
Great shot.
Nice battle, boys, but the war isn't over. We've still got a game to get to.
I unfortunately have more bad news. There is one more threat, possibly the biggest threat of all.
Guys, we have a problem. The boss said that new devil is arriving.
And what did they say about him?
They say he is a legend.
You have to say fair play to Wayne Rooney here. He's saved the world from the apocalypse, he's saved the world from an alien invasion, and now he's saved the world from a very threatening Cabernet Sauvignon. Forget Oxford, forget Russia. Wayne Rooney is the guy we need working on our COVID vaccine. We need to talk about Manchester United's mascot. We need to talk about Fred the Red. Like, we all know that Fred the Red is a creep. And you can tell that all the Manchester United managers have always hated him, although you can tell here that Manchester United fans do love him. The club had full scope here on creating a mascot based on a devil. Any sort of terrifying satanic figure could have been invented here as your mascot. Instead, what Manchester United came up with is what looks like a mildly threatening antagonist from Alvin and the Chipmunks. The South Park devil minus the Saddam Hussein part would have been a better devil. Finally, let's talk about Manchester United celebrity fans. Ian Brown is a Manchester United fan. He tends to watch Manchester United matches between shouting on Twitter things like, "You won't be pepper spraying my kids or shooting your poison into their bodies. Nobody is no to tell you to wear a mask, and every member of Parliament trips on glue." My point here is that nobody likes celebrity Manchester United fans. Shane Ward is a celebrity Manchester United fan, also known as the Federico Macheda of the music world, because it's always surprising when you realise he still has a career. Just kidding, No You Hang Up was an absolute belter and I paid 99 cents for it on iTunes. And finally, Dominic Monaghan is a celebrity Manchester United fan. Here he is with Juan Mata, here he is with Jesse Lingard, and here is Ruud van Nistelrooy disgustingly presenting him with a jersey with a derogatory phrase on the back. Poor from Van Nistelrooy there, really kind of sums up the class, or lack thereof, that exists at Manchester United.
Wow, well, forget about my grinding. It takes a backseat to that wild ride from Owen Shane. And we all enjoyed that. Even Phil Egan, who's joined us now in the studio. Morning to you, Phil.
Morning, how are you doing?
And the big revelation, Owen, you'll find from that. First of all, I must admit that I shared a lift at one point with Federico Makeda, and it's my absolute claim to fame when it comes to these things. That's my sort of posing with a Hobbit jersey. I don't know, where is Federico Makeda these days? You went to West Ham for a while, and
he's in Turkey, isn't he?
All right. Anyway, Phil has told us that he was won over by that Casiro del Diablo ad and has a couple of bottles of it at home.
Oh, really?
There was actually there was a bottle of it purchased in our house yesterday. Now, I didn't make the purchase, but maybe after seeing that.
Well, it took 3 or 4 years for the message to land, and then it was like, we must get around.
There's a few Premier League clubs that have wine as their. And I remember Arsenal have Santa Rita, another another Chilean wine, yeah.
We had Ray Parler in studio promoting that a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Makeda plays with Panathinaikos now.
Wow. He was in the lift with the Pat Rice of United. What was his name? The small fella. This was back in Fergie's days. Do you remember the small fella with the glasses? He was like a kit man and general sort of Superman about the place. Neither of you know it. It's grand.
I know the guy you're talking about. His name escapes me.
Think of his name. Anyway, look, that's where we're at. Enjoy that on. Fair play to you. Who's next for the chopping block, by the way? Do you know yet?
God, I don't know. There's no fans in stadiums anymore, so I mean, all my hatred bubbling up is just dissipated in recent times. Maybe Chelsea. Chelsea are an easy one.
There's a lot of it, to be fair, a lot of that hatred going on. Phil, you're here for a very good reason. You were with us last week and we said the success of the item was going to live and die on how good or bad it was. And it's our list of things that you must watch for the weekend. Last week, it just morphed from the list that was like equally segmented into must watch, if you have a bit of time, watch, and don't bother watching, just became watch the entire thing.
Yeah.
What's the story this weekend?
It's very hard, because remember I had said that the Chelsea game wasn't a must-watch, but it's one that I might watch, and the first half an hour was unbelievable. So it turned into a must-watch.
Yeah.
Callum Robinson scored a couple of goals. Thiago Silva gifts West Brom a goal, and you're thinking, you've spent a lot of money, Frank, and you're 3-0 down to West Brom. I can't remember this happening to a manager before, although I do remember a Brendan Rodgers Liverpool team lose 3-0 away to West Brom on the first day of the season when Zoltan Gira, in Brendan Rodgers' words, scored an absolute worldie. That was on being Liverpool.
You're saying that must-watches are made, not born, basically.
Sometimes
they're decision after a certain amount of time.
Like when you ask me to do this, I look at the list and I say, yeah. I basically tick these off. I go, well, I'll watch that. I'll watch that. I'll watch that. Might watch that. Like if something better comes up, I'm not going to be kicking and screaming saying, no, I'm not going to the shop to get the food shop in. I'm watching this game. Whereas certain games where I think, no, I could do without the first half of this one, but I'll come back for the second half. That's kind of how I felt about Chelsea last week, knowing I'd see the first half, and once I saw the first half, I was hooked. I couldn't turn off the second half.
Right. Well, I think we can all agree on the must-watch list to begin things. Difficult to say to begin things. Leeds against Manchester United.
Yeah, Manchester City.
Banker. Manchester City. Banker.
Yeah, absolutely. And just we said it last week. Leeds are must watch. Even the Sheffield United game last weekend, I watched that and it was 1-0. But even when it was 0-0, it was entertaining. Leeds are just brilliant to watch. Obviously, City are coming off the back of the 5-2 defeat. Then the narrative of the master against the pupil in Bielsa and Guardiola. I wonder if City win, or after the game, famously before Bielsa basically gave his cheat sheets to Guardiola after Bilbao played Barca, and he said, basically, there's the dossier on your team. And Guardiola revealed that Bielsa knew a lot more about his Barca team than Guardiola did himself. So maybe after Leeds and Man City, they share a drink, and Bielsa said, right, this is why you're getting smashed by counter-attacking teams. And this is going to be a really tricky game for Man City, because we know Leeds are going to create chances and Leeds will give up chances as well. So this could be an absolute cracker. 5:30 tomorrow.
Is there any, I think the general expectation here is, because we're so close to that opening day cracker between Leeds and Manchester City, or Leeds and Liverpool, and that Liverpool and Manchester City aren't a million miles apart stylistically, that it just inevitably is going to be that way. Can you make any case for it not going in a similar manner?
If there is absolutely no way this game can finish 0-0.
Not even on Leeds' performance last week? You're 1-0?
No, absolutely not. Because also the fact that Leeds are playing Manchester City and not Sheffield United. Sheffield United are not prolific. We know City will create chances, and with their attack and the way they approach games, they'll also leave gaps at the back, and Leeds will get a few chances as well. Players like Helder Coster, obviously Patrick Bamford has his eye on the golden boot as well.
Everybody's going to be... There's no case to be made for it. Everybody's watching it.
Yeah.
Everybody's watching... Actually, everybody's listening to Manchester United against Tottenham on Sunday at 4:30 as well. Stephen Doyle and Brian Kerr are going to bring you full commentary of that one. It's also on the TV, I'm assuming, but don't worry too much about that. And it's also a must-watch.
Absolutely.
No great debate to be had?
No, because Manchester United, as we've seen, obviously last week they came against Brighton, but given the fact that the transfer window closes on Monday, and there's been such little activity with Manchester United, any defeat or poor result results in absolute meltdown in terms of Manchester United. And the fact that Jose Mourinho's there as well just adds to it all, that if he was to get a result at Old Trafford, if he actually got a win, the panic buys that might be happening on a Monday at Manchester United, it looks like they're going to be doing that anyway. Now, saying that, United actually have a very good record against Spurs, and I don't think they'll be that worried about playing Spurs. We know Spurs obviously have had a busy run of games, but Harry Kane scored a hat-trick last night. Yeah, I think, as I said, United, just the way things are going, they're always worth a watch, because the narrative changes from game to game.
Everybody will be tuned in as well on Sunday for the Sunday evening game for Liverpool thumping Aston Villa.
Not necessarily thumping them, but Villa, the way it worked out, obviously they didn't play Manchester City in the opening weekend because City were in European action in August. So that actually helped Villa. They obviously got the win against Sheffield United, and they got a win against Fulham. So now you're stepping up, and obviously they've signed Ross Barkley. They've recruited well. I think Emi Martinez could be a massive signing for them. And up until last night, I had said to a few Arsenal fans, I think Arsenal got rid of the wrong goalkeeper. Now, obviously, Bert Leno had a brilliant game at Anfield last night, but I actually do think Martinez showed when he came in for Leno last season that he looked so much better. And just in terms of what Arteta is trying to do and play out from the back, Martinez looks far more assured of the ball at his feet. He actually made a mistake last Monday against Fulham. Now, VAR ruled the goal out for a foul by Mitrovic, but I was so shocked by it. That kind of says where he is in terms of the standards that he set. But Villa will actually relish this now. The fact that they'll know exactly where they are in terms of, has the recruitment been good when they're playing.
They'll know where they are after about 20 minutes, and they'll relish it up to about 20 minutes when they're 4-0 down, and then they're like, right, how much can we get for Jack Grealish again to try and get some other players in to...
Well, they've kept 2 clean sheets, but obviously Sadio Mane loves playing against Villa. Absolutely loves it, and to be honest, loves playing against anyone these days because he's just an unbelievable player. But yeah, this was a really tricky game for Liverpool last season, where they scored twice in the last few minutes to come from behind. But yeah, you'd expect Liverpool to win, and you just want to see what Villa are like. Obviously, will Ross Barkley get a run? Don't know if he'll start. What does that do to the balance of the midfield when he's stuck with the same midfield? He's got Hourihan, and obviously Douglas Luiz and John McGinn are the midfield 3 at the moment. So if he was to bring in Ross Barkley, you would imagine that would probably be bad news for Conor Hourihan, because Luiz is probably the most defensive minded of those players.
Yeah. Chelsea Palace on Saturday at lunchtime. I'm watching this for Palace now more than I'm watching for Chelsea. Yeah. Oddly.
I'm thinking there's no way Frank Lampard can start a touchline spat with Roy Hodgson. The oldest manager in the Premier League, Roy Hodgson doesn't get involved in touchline spats. Do you remember that game where there was a break and play? Palace played Manchester City. Kevin De Bruyne was down getting treatment, and Guardiola and Roy Hodgson sat side by side on the bench, just chatting away to each other. Real respect for 2 different generations in the game, certainly different footballing philosophies. But Frank Lampard seems to love the touchline friction. He turned up with his Snickers on there during the week as if he was just off the site, midweek game, didn't have time to go home and change. And starts giving the big one to Jose Mourinho. Obviously, we know what happened with Liverpool and Chelsea last season, but surely he can't start picking on Roy Hodgson. But it's a tricky game for Chelsea in the sense that if Palace sit in the way they do with their defensive shape, they've got players to hurt Chelsea in the break, and that's what West Brom did. And you could argue West Brom are not as good as Crystal Palace. So the pressure is on Frank Lampard. We knew it was going to be on him regardless of how they started, but they haven't won since the opening weekend.
Like, it's a whole new layer for Frank Lampard. Like, if you do nothing, if you don't follow games that Manchester United play, actually at the minute if you do, maybe this rings true as well, but if you just watch Ole Gunnar Solskjaer in post-match interviews, you think, Jesus, this guy's out of his depth, he hasn't a clue. And careers are not won and lost in post-match interviews, but Frank Lampard also looks like a man who's significantly creaking under the pressure, also on the sideline.
Yeah, there was that thing that people pointed out about him last season when his post-match interviews start with a bit of a serious point, turn into a bit of a joke, and then he corrects himself with a more serious point.
Yeah.
But Frank is looking very serious now because he knows he has to deliver. And people will say it takes time, and they will point at the fact that Jurgen Klopp, to get to where he is now, needed time. But the difference is Jurgen Klopp was given the time because he had the CV to back it up. He was a multiple league winner with Borussia Dortmund, obviously got them to a Champions League final, and you could see bit by bit that he was going to improve Liverpool. Lampard doesn't have that CV. He had the season with Derby where they got to the playoffs. He had last season with Chelsea where they finished fourth, but they were terrible away from home and they conceded too many goals. So that's why he's not going to get that amount of time, and obviously the fact that they spent more than 200 million as well.
I disagree on the whole press conference thing, I must say. I don't think he's obviously got the whole haha no but seriously thing going on, which is obviously very, very funny. But outside of it, I don't think he comes across like lacking. He doesn't. I think he does look assured most of the time. I thought it was quite telling last week when the person he kind of picks out is Marcus Alonso, and he picks his words very carefully. He's the one person that you know that he's going to drop. And there was obviously a report during the week that Marcus Alonso went out and wanted to watch the rest of the game on the telly in the bus rather than actually staying in the stadium, and Lampard was furious with that, and subsequently he is the player that gets thrown under the bus in the press conference afterwards. So I think he's quite tactful actually in his media dealings. I definitely think I think he's a better manager than Solskjaer, put it that way.
I think you're probably right, but I'm also of the opinion that I might be a better manager than Solskjaer, and only time is going to tell on that one. I just think he's creaking a bit under the pressure, right? Like, he feels as if he's not fully in control of everything at all times. You know, like the best post-match, I realise we're in the sort of realms of craziness here, but the best, and as I said, careers don't live or die by it, but the best interview givers are the ones who look like they couldn't give a toss about it, right? Like, they're the ones who come out and are like, they've just been beaten 3-0, and that sort of Sam Allardyce approach to, I mean, it's also true in his case of somebody who...
What about Klopp? Klopp, clearly does give a toss quite deeply.
If you look back at the Klopp interviews from years ago when they're losing 3-0 at Watford, where Adam Bogdan's in goal conceding 3 goals at Watford now. I know they conceded 3 goals at Watford last season, but Klopp would laugh off these things because he knew that this was going to take time, this was a project. But as I said, he was given the time because people knew how good he was, and I mean, look how that's turned out. I don't know. I mean, if you gave Frank Lampard 5 more years with Chelsea, what would they do? I suppose if they spent 200 million every summer, I'm sure they could probably get close to winning a league title. But you know, they don't look very well coached at the back, and obviously they've brought in Mendy in goal. One thing he did the other night, he came out for a high ball and he caught it, and I thought, oh no, like it's a big step up for him in terms of just the pressure he's going to be under. He has to be the saviour for Chelsea because they had the world's most expensive goalkeeper. They have the world's most expensive goalkeeper, and now Mendy's been brought in basically to rescue this.
Yeah. Phil, you're testing my patience now with this list because it's still in the, by the way, we're still in the must-watch list, and I don't know how this one is squeaked in. Like, it's a Saturday 3 o'clock kickoff, which should have been the first clue that you needn't bother. Everton against Brighton.
Game of the weekend.
Everton against Brighton's not a must-watch. Everton going to win, trying to win their first 4 league games of the season. Do you know the last time they did that, Adrian? 1969. What happened that season? Everton won the league.
Not having it, Phil. It's not. So that isn't.
James Rodriguez. Obviously, Brighton as well are a different kettle of fish now as well. They're very good away from home, so this actually could be a really good game. And yeah, I want to see Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who now he's obviously got, he thinks he's Dixie Dean the way he's banging in the goals now. So I think Everton are must watch, and obviously if they can finish this little spell off with a win, then the international break, the first game back, it's the Merseyside derby. So
I know these other games you've in the might watch category. You're definitely watching Leicester West Ham on Sunday at 12 o'clock. Arsenal Sheffield United. Must listen. We must mention on that one as well. Nathan and Kenny will be on duty for that one and Off the Ball on Sunday at 2 o'clock. But you're in the not watching category. Newcastle against Burnley on Saturday evening. That's because you've just got a life. Southampton against West Brom on Sunday, and Wolves against Fulham on Sunday.
Yes, Fulham could surprise you, Phil.
Fulham.
Wolves versus Fulham could surprise you.
Oh, it could do, but see, it's on the same time as Arsenal Sheffield United, so that's why it's a won't watch, and that's why I won't watch Southampton West Brom, because Leicester and West Ham are on at the same time, and then I just won't watch Newcastle Burnley because it could actually 8 o'clock kick off on a Saturday. I mightn't even make it beyond 9 o'clock. I could be asleep.
Phil, we know that anything that wanders into the might watch or won't watch listen is a work of fiction, and we look forward to your updates on Twitter over the weekend when on Saturday night at 8 o'clock, instead of watching whatever box office movie is on RTE, you're going to be tuned in to Newcastle.
It's usually a fairly kind of a universal film. A load of like an animation one RTE usually show on this, and I hate the way they interrupted them for the lotto.
Oh yeah, 20 minutes of the lotto.
Like it's
like a UEFA, it's like a Champions League draw.
Well, I can't understand if you have kids, you're thinking young kids. You're probably thinking it's probably time to start getting them ready for bed, and then they drag it out with the lotto draw. That's not really great, is it? I know we're kind of venturing into dadcast here now, so
I'm all for that. You want to be getting them to bed before 8 o'clock as well.
Yeah.
Owen's about to tickle the ivories to take us out, Phil. But thanks a million for this morning. Good man. Enjoy the football over the weekend. A reminder as well, by the way, that the Snap is back and has been back for the last couple of weeks. Tune in from midday today. It's going to be Ger, Ronan and Cian talking NFL. Also make sure to sign up for our American football newsletter, OTB Club Gridiron. We've got the latest news from both Ireland and from the States up on otbsports.com, as well as podcasts, long and short form video content, all included there. You can subscribe at otbsports.com/club gridiron. Enjoy all that OTB Club Gridiron has to offer. So that's what you need to get up to for the weekend. You can't be tempted.
No, tickle the ivories does sound kind of like quite a creepy phrase. I'm not going to lie, especially for 9:56 on a Friday morning. And no, can't be tempted. I wish like temptation was a real thing here, where I was like, oh God, I do have this talent that I'm shielding from you, but there is nothing to hide. There is nothing in the Pandora's box of piano playing talents in these fingers, at least. All
of us who are at level 3 in Dublin and in Donegal, and like it's a lot of hardship for a lot of people, and acutely aware of that. But when you're in the free world, on what's for the weekend, like fling off the gear and sort of run around the fields of West Kerry just to express your freedom that way?
That's it, exactly. Tickle the ivories that way. That's it, exactly. You can do whatever you want. Smell the fresh air. Go for a walk. But I clearly have massive plans to really take advantage of this free world down here. Who knows what the possibilities might lie. What are you going to do in terms of your lock-in?
Absolutely nothing. I'm going to grind the shit out of the weekend is really my main objective. There's nothing you can do, and like I'm sort of been by and large okay with that. It is beginning to borrow the phrase grind on me now. I have to say I just would like to get out of Dublin at some point. I'm at that point now, and I didn't really think that I was ever going to get here. I said to you earlier on that over the early stages of lockdown, back in March or whatever it was, I spent a weekend going in a very downward circle of trying to get to grips with everything that was going on. But I've been relatively fine since that. But it is beginning to grind my gears now, and we've 2 small kids at home, and you don't even want to be going to playgrounds that much. You don't want to be going out that much. You don't want to be mixing with people that much, and it makes it, it does make it very difficult.
Where are you going to set up shop? Westmeath?
When I eventually get out.
When you eventually get out?
I'll definitely go home at some point. Definitely want to get home and see the folks. That'll be top of the agenda down to Athlone. But yeah, after that, the difficulty is that actually even over the course of the short period of time that's been level 3, we've gone from actually half decent weather into freezing cold, and so I would like to have gone camping at some point out and around the country, but that ain't going to happen now. So I don't know, and I just feel, stop shackling me down. Let me out. Let me at it.
Let you run free.
I don't even know. I don't even know if I will do that. If I would do an Owen Shane and whip off the gear and run around the fields of West Kerry, I don't even know if I would do that. But I just want, a bit like the life of Brian, I want to reserve the right to be able to do that if I want.
You want to, you want to choose to be bored rather than forced to be bored.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's it. And speaking of that, we don't want to be boring people any longer. Thanks a million, Owen. Fair play this morning, and catch up with you next week. And enjoy that weekend of flinging the gear off and running around or whatever it is you're up to. It's in terms of what's coming up a little bit later on, OTB Sports Radio, as we mentioned, from midday is the snap. We really got you covered over the course of the day. And then from 1:30, the Paddy Power half hour is going to mark your card if you fancy a few flutters over the weekend and fancy getting your card marked. I swear you're going to put your fiver down. Tune in for that. Friday night racing with Ger and Johnny from 3 o'clock. The Team 33 Legend interview this week from 4 o'clock is in the company of Brendan Bradley. And then OTB Gold, it's must listen Catherine Switzer and her experience of running the 1967 Boston Marathon when she really shouldn't have done, at least from an official point of view, and that's coming away from 6 o'clock today. And if you don't have the OTB Sports app already, do yourself a favour, search OTB Sports in the App Store right now and download it. We're back on air and online from 7 o'clock tonight. We're live across the weekend as well. And OTB AM, as you know, back on your screens, 7:30 Monday morning. Good morning.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette.